Alrighty, team, welcome back to Becoming a Bowhunter. Sitting here online with Mr. Donnie Vincent. Donnie, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate you reaching out.
Oh, more than welcome, man. I've heard you talk plenty on different podcasts, and you're always so well spoken about hunting and what you do in general. I mean, the background with being a wildlife biologist obviously comes into it, but the amount of time that you actually spend in the wild, I think you get a really clear view on what the wild can do for your mindset, and how much it can be a cut filler, like a refreshing vibe to your energy in general, but B, also just getting to see some of the incredible stuff that you do get to see and witness. It's so much of, I mean, me being a city slicker, I live in the big city all the time. And so I didn't realize it until I started getting out 5 years ago, what you can actually witness in nature just by sitting down or just by walking through the bush. It's just absolutely incredible. It just adds this whole new element to life that literally most of the people are missing out on. I often think it'd be so cool to just not force hunting on anyone, but say, hey, you need to go and spend a week in the bush. Like, I think that could give some people some great perspective in general.
Yeah, I think if you took a population and could somehow say, "Hey, you have to enter, you have to do, a 6 week hunting training course, to once you get your driver's license, you have to go and take a 6 week or 8 week hunting course. You actually have to enter in the woods, go and hunt, and shoot a rabbit, shoot squirrels, shoot a deer, skin it, eat it, understand the different body parts. If everyone had to do that, and in addition join the military for a
Mm.
subset of years and also defend your country and pick up a rifle. And I think if everyone had to do those two things, I know in the United States, we'd have a very different country.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Especially
Yeah.
right now. I mean, obviously there's a lot of political stuff going on, has been for many years, but yeah, I think that would make a world of difference. Mate, I wanted to actually ask you, being that you do have a background in wildlife biology and you've had some absolutely incredible experiences with wolves in general, what's your take on the reintroduction of wolves that's been happening recently, I think in Colorado in particular? What's kind of your outlook on that whole process?
Yeah. So first, I want to say that I'm not educated on exactly, I don't know all the parameters and all the
Mhm.
variables in Colorado and some of the other states where they've done reintroductions, but um, I struggle with the idea of it. To me, on the outside, from, as they say, 50,000 feet view, um, it feels as though they're reintroducing an animal to increase tourism or to increase kind of the storyline around Colorado, to put wolves on a bumper sticker, to put their iconic Red Sea, I believe it's a Red Sea for their state logo. I see a wolf howling in there. I see this as being kind of an attractive, uh, fauna for the state to kind of hang their hats on. I don't see a biological reason for it. It seems as though where I struggle is the amount of people that live in Colorado now and the type of people that live in Colorado now, and where encroachment has happened from human beings and loss of habitat and all these different things that kind of come with the population of people colonizing or settling into an area. It's very different shape. It's a very different population than when wolves lived there. And
Yeah.
so the game animal populations, the wild habitat, the areas that are unbroken by roads and by housing developments and by business sectors, those are much smaller and much more segmented than they ever were when the wolf lived there. So I think reintroducing the wolf, A, does a disservice to the wolf
Mm.
and does a disservice to humans as well. And hopefully, maybe if I'm spinning it and putting some silver, putting a silver light on it, um, maybe some areas will do well with wolves there and they won't overflow and start taking over the area. But the wolves have to take care of the wolf,
Hmm.
um, and the other game species have to try and take care of themselves. I think it's biologists or political agendas that maybe are taking over what would otherwise be a bad idea.
Yeah, we've definitely got some of that happening out here in Australia. Just recently, the blue groper has been removed from a fishing species that can be taken in New South Wales, which is the state here, and there's no science backing it at all. It's purely based on feelings, and unfortunately, that's kind of a lot of what's happening out here in general. There's a lot of feelings being felt by humans with no reason behind it. There's no science behind it. They're not tracking the numbers. If you look, I do a bit of spearfishing and going down, and you see there's so many numbers of groper everywhere. The blue groper in particular, like you see them everywhere when you go under. Especially like I've only done a little bit in northern New South Wales, but they're prolific. Like there's that many of them. Yet it's literally just kind of being pushed by this party. Same for bow hunting. It's been removed from Tasmania now. In South Australia, they're trying to get rid of it right now, and it's purely, unfortunately, it's non-hunters. Or sorry, it's people who have got a bow and arrow. They're not a hunter. They don't have a broadhead or anything like that on their bow. They're literally just shooting with field points, and they're going and shooting random animals. So it's an act of someone who's not a hunter, because a hunter would understand, hey, you don't shoot them with the field point. You've got to get a broadhead. You've got to do everything else, right? And that's then unfortunately kind of approaching and I guess, infringing on us as hunters now and taking away the thing that we get to do and love, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. And you see it too, in British Columbia, Canada, you can't hunt grizzly bears anymore, which in my lifetime growing up, if you would have told me that you can't hunt grizzly bears in British Columbia, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Like if somebody said, hey, we need to vote or we need to write letters or we need to respond because they're going to shut down grizzly bear hunting in British Columbia, I'd be like, you are nuts, man. They're never shutting down. And now, and I believe I might be mistaken, but you can still shoot grizzly bears there, but you can't take their skulls or their hides. You can only take their meat.
Hmm.
I don't understand that whole process, because if you're going to allow to shoot an animal, you should be allowed to take all the products from it. I understand them saying, hey, no longer can the grizzly bear be a trophy hunt. No longer can you shoot a bear, skin it, and just take the skull and claws. You have to take the meat. You have to utilize the meat. Warden has to be able, or fish conservation officer has to be able to come to your house, see this meat in your freezer, see that you're actually utilizing it, or you're going to get a ticket, or even worse. That I totally agree with 100%. But yeah, like shutting down all these different areas, we're losing to the general population that wants to order their groceries in their apartment. They want to go to a restaurant with their wife or their girlfriend, and they want to walk out of their house and they want to get into their electric car, or they want to take an electric train to a restaurant where somehow protein falls out of the sky and the chef has to cook it for them. And then now, it's a massive disconnect. And then if somebody pulls a gun on you, you want to be able to call 911. If somebody up your toe, you want to be able to call an ambulance. And it's human beings losing their position as warriors and as an actual species. We're de-evolving, right? We're getting less strong. We're getting more fat. We're getting more dumb. We're spending less time outside. We are de-evolving. We're becoming sacks of meat and
fat. A lot of fat.
A lot of yeah. I'm walking around the States, man. Whew.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just as bad here in Australia now in some parts. But yeah, it's ridiculous. And I talk to a lot of farmers now that I've gone into hunting. Like over the last 5 years, I've had more connection with farmers than probably basic city folk. But at the same time, what you start to realize is that these agendas are being pushed because of the destruction that they're doing within the city. So for instance, they keep expanding in cities, they keep knocking down massive amounts of tree fall and whatever else. So what they start to do is they go and take that away from the farmers. So the farmers can now no longer clear trees, and they can no longer do certain things on their block that they used to be able to have full rights to be able to do, because of what we're now doing in the cities. And then the farmers get pointed out as the bad people. Like right now for climate change and your gases and whatever else, to be blamed on cows and to be blamed on farmers, it just absolutely it boils my blood. It's so ridiculous. Versus when we saw the world change in not even 3 months with COVID, right? Once we stopped down transport, once we shut down a few things, and the world went back to being like completely peaceful in this amazing little place where animals would roam everywhere. You're like, well, hold up. So are farmers really the issue here? Like, let's have a real conversation about it if you want to. But I don't know. That stuff boils my blood. You touched on it briefly, and something I was going to touch on later, but Eat what you kill. That's kind of a big metaphor for you. Is that actually I've always been a meat hunter. Coming into it, that was kind of always my drive, was to start hunting for meat. For the last 2.5 years, we pretty much have not had to buy meat at all just because of hunting. Can you talk more to just that aspect of it, and I guess also the education you get to give other people on the meat and how incredible it can be?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's very difficult to kill an animal, right? That's a big barrier of
Mm-hmm.
entry, big decision to actually pull the trigger, shoot your bow, whatever it is. And to do so and to just skin it out for whatever it is that you want to utilize and then leave the carcass. And obviously, there's elements of the carcass that get used, right? So if somebody kills a black in a legal area, someone in a legal area, someone kills a black bear, and in that area, you only have to take the hide and skull. You can leave the meat. Some people would say, "Hey, that's a travesty," and I tend to agree. However,
Hmm.
that meat gets utilized, right, by the other bears, by ravens, by eagles.
Definitely.
The system comes in and utilizes that meat. However, there are some areas where you can legally do that, and other animals kind of pick up the slack. But a lot of areas that I've hunted, and with a lot of different people that I've hunted, they'll say, hey, we love shooting snow geese, but they taste terribly. It's sky carp. So we try to just give them all away because they taste horribly. Hey, we love shooting Canada geese. Their numbers are outrageous. They're all over golf courses and lawns and all over the place. We have to get goose numbers down. They taste horrible, so we just try to give them away. Or black bear meat, or grizzly bear meat, or I've heard this many places that I've hunted,
Hmm.
things that I've hunted. Hey, you can't eat a rutting caribou, right? If you shoot a caribou during the rut, you can't eat its meat. It's too pungent. Hey, you can't eat an old deer. They're like, you shoot a big old nasty buck. My dad used to tell me this sometimes. You shoot a big old nasty buck, you can't even eat that thing. It's like shoe leather. And right now I'm eating a moose that I killed in Maine, in the
Hmm.
state of Maine, and in the state of Maine, you have to send a tooth off when you kill a bull or a cow.
Okay.
And this bull that I killed was 13 and a half years old. Biologist came back and said I killed,
Wow.
it was something like the fourth or fifth or sixth oldest moose killed that year in Maine.
Hmm.
So they don't live much longer than that. So right at the upper end. And the meat is absolutely fantastic. And then I've heard people say you can eat deer if they're farmland deer and they're eating corn, you can eat them. But if they're up north and they're eating trees and acorns, you can't eat them. And same with black bear meat. And I've just over and over the years and years and years, it just has been proven not true. And I hear this a lot about grizzly bears, a
Mm.
lot about, and like I was just on a grizzly bear hunt this time last year in April. I went on a grizzly bear hunt last year, and I didn't kill one, but three of my buddies killed them, and or two of my buddies killed bears. And this was a conservation hunt. So
Hmm.
on this particular hunt, you didn't have to take the bear meat. You could leave it in the forest. Basically, the state of Alaska just wants several bears killed out of this area because they prey so successfully on moose and caribou that they're
Mm.
just trying to knock the bear numbers down. And it's very difficult area to access, very difficult to hunt these bears, and so they're just trying to knock the numbers down. In fact, in many areas of Alaska, you can only shoot one brown bear every 4 years.
Wow.
In this, you can shoot two bears a year.
Hmm. There you go.
So, but anyway, we killed bears, and we didn't take all the meat. We left some of it on the mountain for eagles and ravens and other bears, but we did take meat. And at night, on the nights that we were there, we would have shrimp that we pulled out of the ocean from a previous trip, and then we'd eat the bear meat, and it was
Wow.
fantastic. It was world
Hmm.
class, it was unbelievable. And the guy that we were hunting with, he's like, yeah, we never used to eat grizzly bears. He's like, we've always been told how stinky they were, how horrible they were. And then I believe it was his brother, was cooking up dinner one night and was trying to trick them all. And he cut up grizzly bear steaks and made everyone grizzly bear steaks without telling anyone, and then served it all the camp, and everyone was eating it. And he was like, yeah, how's everyone enjoying their dinner? Like, this is amazing. This is unbelievable. And what is it? And he's like, oh, it's moose meat. And so, or caribou or whatever. And so and they're like, oh, it has a unique taste to it, but it's really good. And they're going on. And then he started laughing. He's like, you guys are eating grizzly bear. And so, it's pretty common, right? Mountain
Yeah.
lion, bears, old deer. Like I can't even tell you how many times somebody said, oh, the animal you just killed, it's nearly unedible. And then we
Mm.
go ahead and prepare it and it gets eaten immediately.
Definitely. Yeah. I've had an old, probably the gamiest is obviously the thing that people say, oh, it's too gamey. It tastes too gamey. It's kind of like like you said, a potent taste essentially. And I would say that definitely the gamiest meat I've ever eaten was an old red hind, but
Uh-huh.
she was still very edible. Like it just had a bit more of a taste. And so it just meant that most of my cooking turned to like low and slow or like, yeah, a slow cooker instead. And we had some great stews, we had some incredible curries, and it's just, I think it just, you just need to pivot a little bit on the way that you're cooking it. But there's incredible ways to enjoy that meat, no matter what level it's at. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a very interesting thing. It's something that I've really been trying to push for the last 5 years. Is like, hey, you don't have to like take the meat because you can cook it in so many different ways, and like don't leave the shanks because they're absolutely incredible. Like don't think that the neck meat because it's hard to get to is not meat you should be taking. Like it's some of the best meat for any stew or curry that you're going to ever have. So yeah, it's I think coming from this angle of being a meat hunter in a sense, like yes, I've got trophies, and yes, I always want to improve on the animals I'm getting. Like that's part of it, I think, as well. But yeah, it's always been a big push for me is the meat side of it.
Yeah. I mean, finding big animals is really fun, right? Because that animal is
Mhm.
life and it's rare to see a big animal. It's rare to hunt a big animal. So when you can see an animal of that caliber, it's exciting, like if somebody's writing a book or they're printing a magazine, no one puts a small animal on the cover of a magazine. Nobody puts if you're an airplane pilot, they don't put an ugly airplane on the cover. If you're a street bike magazine, they don't put a piece of crap street bike on the cover. They put really elegant
Mhm.
presentations of whatever it is. And so we grow up looking at whether books on wildlife or magazines on hunting and fishing and you end up wanting to catch a huge tuna because it's such a rare special event to see one of these
Exactly.
massive animals and yeah, so I totally appreciate it. Yeah.
Definitely. I've built a relationship with this red deer, which I'm going back out to try find next week. I've called him Frank the Tank because he's this beautiful big red deer, nice big tops and everything on him, like just incredible. Um, but I'm just excited to actually see him in nature again and like just get to hang out with him again. Obviously the goal is to try kill him if I can and try to take him and preserve everything that I can of him, but at the same time this little relationship that I've built up. It's just like it's funny that he's almost like a friend I'm willing to go see again or something like that. And that sounds a bit bizarre, the fact that I'm going to go and try slaughter this animal, but essentially that it's just an interesting vibe that you build up with them. Have you ever done that with an animal essentially where you found one that you're trying to always try and go after?
Oh yeah, I've hunted our first film, The Rivers Divide, was about a deer that a friend of mine nicknamed as Steve.
Oh, I did
Um
hear this. Yes, okay, go on. Sorry.
I hunted 2 years and then not too many people actually know this, but and this is a film that we're going to edit and put together here relatively soon. But I kind of did the same story as Steve in North Dakota on the exact same ranch in nearly the exact same spot. Uh, Something very similar happened where we had this deer that we'd nicknamed Bob because either a coyote or a mountain lion bit his tail in half.
Oh,
And
wow.
so my tail usually has, like a 12-inch tail or whatever. And his tail was bit off like this big. And it was almost hard not to laugh when we'd see him because when he'd walk by, he was always
A little nub.
wiggling. You
Yeah.
see this like having a little pug or whatever. And so we named him Bob for a bobtail. And I was hunting one night and it was probably 35 below zero Fahrenheit.
Hmm.
It was a very, very cold night, and I was sitting out all day, and I saw him. He was a 6.5-year-old buck, a really big, handsome 8 pointer, and he's walking by at just over 30 yards. And I came to full draw. I anchored. I felt really good. I put it on his chest. I slowly pulled my shot, and I just hit him like an inch and a half low, and it went
Mm,
through. Instead of going through his heart, it went through his
that's
brisket.
cool.
Like when you watch it on video, you're like, you smoked him. Like
Yeah.
hammer dead. But it was really funny because the arrow hit him and he took off running. He was with a doe and he took off running. And then I was talking to William Altman, the gentleman who was filming it, and he's like, I think it's a good shot. And I was like, yeah, you think so? And we were talking about it. And then just a few minutes later, here comes this doe like trotting through the trees, and she just sneaks through this little cedar thicket. And here Bob's right behind her, bleeding, but he's still just, we're like, oh, he's fine. He's totally fine. Like
Uh-huh.
and then I hunted that deer for 3 years. I hunted that deer only and for 3 years, and I shot him. Have you seen The Rivers Divide by chance?
I have not seen that one. I've seen three of your films, but not no two of your films, but not that one.
Okay, so where I kill when I finally kill Steve, let's just say he's facing like this when I
Mm-hmm.
kill him. Bob, when I finally kill him 3 years later, if I superimpose the video, their noses are almost touching when I kill them.
Wow. Like literally the exact same spot.
Yep, but I where I wounded Steve, I killed him in that same spot
Hmm.
a year later. And with Bob, I wounded him like 3 miles away on this ranch and then killed him in the same spot where Steve was. And it's
That's
just
incredible.
really incredible. So there's lots of deer that I've hunted. In fact, it's very common for us. I hunt a big farm in Illinois. It's very, very common for us to watch the deer get to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And so rather than, and a lot of people, and I totally appreciate it, a lot of people, they get annoyed and turned off when you name a deer, right? When you're saying,
Mm.
oh, this red deer is Frank the Tank. And they go, kind of, how dare you? It's this wild animal. He lives in a wild place. And I totally appreciate that. But what we end up doing if we don't do that, if we don't give them nicknames, what we end up doing, like when we're talking to someone else, when you're talking to one of your mates on the phone and he said, hey, how was your hunt? And you're like, oh man, I saw that one red stag, the big heavy one with the 2 points at the top. And you end up going through this 5 sentence description of this deer. When in lieu, you can talk to him and be like, how was your hunt? And be like, oh man, Frank the Tank walked by at 40 yards. And he immediately knows who you're talking about. And so
Exactly. Yeah.
that's kind of what these things, it's kind of where it comes from, just ease of conversation and communication.
It's also funny what people are willing to put to an animal, like, oh, but it has feelings and it acts like a human, but you can't give it a name. Like some things are acceptable to say, but some things are not. You better not do that. It's just funny how that's a
Yeah, this
level as well.
time frame of double standard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Mate, I can see it in the background, the caribou that's hanging on the wall. I'm absolutely fascinated by caribou. A lot of people here in Australia in particular, yeah, they love the idea of going over for an elk hunt. Some of the animals that interest me are actually caribou. Like it's pretty high up on my list for going overseas and hunting one day. And probably a moose as well. But you've been someone who's actually hunted caribou a lot. What can you
Yeah.
kind of tell us about caribou? What's been your favorite experience with caribou? Yeah, give us the rundown.
Yeah, you talk to most guys and Australians. You talk to most guys in the States. Australians, I hear this a lot from. Do you know who Nick Joyce is?
Yep. Yep. I know
Yeah.
Nick Joyce.
Good friend of mine, and he's always talking about coming over elk hunting.
Hmm.
Um, and people ask me a lot, like, "Hey, do you enjoy elk hunting?" And elk is just very, very popular around here. Calling them in, hunting them, whatever. But for me, caribou is far more kind of pulled at me than elk have, and
Mm.
um, a little bit of the dichotomy. Elk, obviously elk live in really wild places, but generally where elk live, there's a lot of people. And so
Mm.
you're hiking into trailheads and you're going into wilderness areas, but you're going into wilderness areas where there's another group of guys starting on the other side of the mountain range from you, or even multiple guys starting at your starting point when you're going elk hunting or whatever.
Yeah.
Go caribou hunting, I'm hiring a pilot and he is dropping me off on some sandbar or some mountaintop in the middle of nowhere. And I've been on, I don't know, I've probably hunted caribou 10 times, let's just say in my life, 10 or 12 times I've hunted caribou.
Hmm.
And I've seen people, probably like, let's say I've done 12 caribou hunts. I've probably seen people on 3 hunts.
Wow.
Other than that, I've been in a place for, I'll be in a place for 20 days and I won't see another human being. I won't even hear an airplane. Some areas you're where, the kind of the flight is happening and you'll
Yes.
see
Yeah.
you'll see or hear airplanes, but sometimes like you literally will not see or hear an airplane the entire time you're hunting.
Crazy,
No,
completely peaceful.
and they're just, to me, they're the symbol of the North.
Hmm.
And, migrating, and they have these big white manes, and they have these big distinct antlers, and there's several different species. I'm actually really bummed about. There's a few species of caribou that I wanted to hunt since I was a kid, and there was always like Quebec Labrador caribou that I
Hmm.
always put that way down on the list because it was the cheapest caribou to hunt, and there was millions and millions and millions of animals, and so it was like for $3,000 you can come up to Quebec and shoot two, and like there's all
Hmm.
this stuff in it. And now those herds have crashed, not from
Hmm.
hunting but just from natural cycle, and it's going to take them maybe my lifetime to recover. Right, these are big crashes, they take a long time to recover.
Hmm.
Same, there's also a herd in Alaska called the Mulchatna, and when I was in college, like it was nothing for a group of guys to go into the Mulchatna and shoot like two Boone and Crockett record book bulls.
Wow.
That hunt did sustain a lot of overhunting because it was within flight distance of Anchorage, Alaska, the major
Hmm.
city. And so there was overhunting happening there, but then also predation of wolves, and then also the natural cyclic drop of caribou. But so some of the herds, the historical herds that I've always wanted to hunt, there are not available for me to hunt right now, and maybe not in my lifetime. But like that's a woodland caribou from Newfoundland.
Hmm.
There's another caribou right down the post from it at the end. That's from the Arctic Circle. I've got another really big bull that I'll carry in here in a moment and show you that I killed last year on the Alaska Peninsula. Really big bull. And it's the epitome of wild to me, man.
Hmm.
They're moving across the landscape. They live with moose and grizzly bears and wolves and the northern lights, and the streams are pristine, and there's beavers, and it's it's the epitome of hunting and wilderness and wildlife.
Sounds
It's number one.
incredible. Do you
Yeah.
only get them when they're migrating?
I've shot several while they were migrating. This was a non-migrating herd, although I shot him while he was pushing his cows. This particular guy, he had four cows with him, and he would 4 or 5, and he'd get way out ahead of them, and then he'd realize they weren't with him, and you'd see kind of the frustration on his face, and he'd track all the way back, and he'd get around them and growl at them all, and he'd push them all, and then he'd run up. That's how I actually killed him, because I found his cows, and I was like, oh, he's gonna come back
Hmm.
to hurt him because I'd been watching him do it. And when he came back, I arrowed him. Um, but yeah, one time I've killed several caribou that were migrating where I would see, 200 caribou in a day,
Wow.
300 a day, something like that. But one bull, that bull actually, that's at the end of the post down there,
Yeah.
I killed him on a day. The day that I killed him, I probably saw 5,000.
Holy.
And it was like we got up in the morning, we were camping on a sandbar in the middle of I can't think of the river right now, but it's a tributary to the Noatak. And it's cold, the puddles on the gravel bar were frozen, and the rocks were frosty in the morning. The teepee was frozen solid, and having a little fire and some coffee, and we'd killed 3 bulls already, and so um, we had their meat in the teepee. We'd pull it out at night, and it would freeze, and then
Wow.
we'd go push inside the teepee to reduce a bear coming and finding it, and
Hmm.
the ravens are squawking, and this red fox, he'd come through our camp, and he'd pick up all of our scraps from caping out hides, and
Yeah.
and a magical morning, and I was the only one left with a tag. um and have you ever read that book by Michael Easter, The Comfort Crisis?
I have not. No.
You got it. I think
Yeah, I will. I'll write it down. I like that.
you would really do. But the author Michael Easter, this was the hunt I took him on like a 30 or 40-day hunt in Alaska, and this was the hunt he was on. And one of the photographers that works for me, William Altman, uh, my binos were just sitting there next to the tent. He just grabbed them, and he just started scanning the mountains around us. And he's like, "Hey," and I was doing something else, and I looked over, and he goes, "You're gonna want to see this." And I go, "What?" I go, are you seeing animals already? Because the sun just came up, and
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, you're gonna want to see this. And so we set up my spotting scope and like literally threw my eye in the scope and just scanned these mountains out in front of us. The mountains are probably 5 miles away.
Hmm.
Each mountain had, you know, 700-800 caribou coming over it.
Wow.
It looked like ants coming over all. And then like
Yeah.
you'd look in this valley and you'd see another group, and you'd look a mountain like 20 miles away and you'd see like 5 groups on that. And it's just
That's wild. That's so
they
cool.
poured in the valley all day. And it was, I mean, looked like a National Geographic. It looked like Planet
Mm-hmm.
Earth. Like, the old original Walt Disney wilderness wildlife films. I used everything I ever wanted in my life.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so how many of you arrowed versus how many of you shot with a rifle?
I have arrowed, I have arrowed 1, 2, 3, 4. I've arrowed 4.
Hmm.
Arrowed a mountain caribou, woodland caribou, and 2 barren ground caribou. And then with a rifle, I have shot barren ground caribou. I shot that guy with a rifle. So 1, 2, 3. I've shot three with a rifle.
Yeah, wow. That's
3 with a
incredible.
rifle. I've went on, and then I've went on probably 3 caribou hunts where I didn't get one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And in the like I'm assuming they kind of have a mating season, kind of like most other deer species or elk or something like that, where they'll mate for a month essentially. Is it kind of similar?
Yeah, it's very similar. But you're also getting them at that time. Like for the woodland caribou, it's a big thing. Like because
Mhm.
they're on Newfoundland, right? They're on an island, and the island's not that big, but you basically see these kind of pockets of caribou that are rutting, right? You'll
Mm.
see them they'll have their cows or hinds, however you want to say it. They'll have their cows, and then other bulls will be coming in. They'll be fighting, just kind of like a whitetail or a mule deer would,
Awesome.
or
Yeah.
deer species. Um, and then they'll have their group of does or group of cows. But like in Alaska and some of the bigger areas where we're hunting, that same thing is going on, but they're also migrating from their calving grounds to their wintering grounds. So they're rutting, but the rut is not dominating their life. The
Okay.
migration dominating their life, and
Yes,
then they're
got you.
rutting stuff as they're doing that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So they don't necessarily come in for like a call or anything like that.
Oh no, no.
No.
I mean, like when I saw him, like sometimes, or if I've had a bull see me,
Hmm.
because let's say I'm hunting a string of caribou, and this is a true story. I crawled after a herd of caribou one time, and there's probably 200 animals in the herd,
Wow.
100, 200 animals, and there's only one shooter, and he was a giant, and he was at the back of the herd, and he was walking, he was super big, and he was walking, he was attacking all the other bulls. If any other bull came within his little circle, he'd just attack him. And he had big, super heavy antlers, and his antlers were like his bez was broken off, his shovel was cracked in half. Any caribou that
Proper
came within,
character.
oh man, he just wanted to mess with them.
Yeah.
I was sitting there with a bow, and they were going right past me at like 25 yards. But one of the bulls noticed me. And so he started angling, right? He saw me. He doesn't know what I am, but he's just kind of curious, looks at you almost like a cow would, like cattle.
Hmm.
Kind of
Hmm.
has this. Then he just angles his gait a little bit, 1%, and he starts walking. But if you look at the whole herd, the back of the herd does that same turn
Yeah, wow.
immediately. And so if he cants 1%, starts walking away, they can't 1%, but they're still
So
hundreds of
far
yards away.
away. Yeah.
Now they're not walking past me at 25 yards, they're walking past me at 75 yards because
Hmm.
they a little bit. So, sometimes when a caribou would see me or I was sneaking up on a caribou and they're kind of suspicious, I would just kind of like go, because they kind of make like a piggy noise, and they're very vocal, and their hooves click and pop, and they're always like, "Meh, meh, meh." So I'd
Yeah.
make noise calm them down. But yeah, you're not gonna rattle them in. You're not gonna, if you see one you call, they're not gonna come running. They're just gonna look at you like, nah, dude.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. It's
We're
big area, right, Maddie? Like it's big. Like you see a caribou. I mean, like the big bull that I killed last year. Like when we saw him, like the he starts at 4 miles away. So that's when I'm seeing him, and as I'm
mm,
going at him, he's walking away, he's moving away or whatever, and you have to hope that they're going to stop because you can't outwalk them. And so
no.
we're talking huge distances here
Hmm.
because it's not 4 miles on a track, right?
No. Yeah.
It's four
Up and down
miles of
hills and yeah.
oh, I mean 5,000 foot mountains. You're having to cross rivers, you're having to cross alders and salmonberry bushes that are almost impenetrable. Like it's a raw 4 miles.
You realize how powerful those animals are when you start trekking up the same hills as them, and they just do it with ease. They just whoop, straight up, and then you're like huffing and puffing, and legs are hurting, and yeah, yeah, exactly. And they just cruise.
And then you pick up their antlers at the end, right?
Oh, crazy.
I can barely pick it up, and they're walking around with that thing on their head all day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely insane. We did something similar on the weekend. We were hunting. We had some pigs. We actually shot these really big boars. Me and Grant both shot one each. It was incredible. Grant from Caribou Broadheads, and we we were walking through, and there was a sow with these piglets, and she knew we were there, but we didn't want to spook her because we were trying to get around her to go up onto the hill where some deer were, and we started walking around her, and she kept looking, and she'd look back down. She kept looking, trying to catch us out. And so we just start mooing, moo. all these pigs are like, it's all good. It's just a cow. And then they just went back to eating. They were like, it's all fine. It's just pretending to be other animals works really well.
Love that about Australia, seeing the pigs. And
Mm,
I shot a couple pigs when I was there buffalo hunting, and it was really cool.
yeah.
Really, yeah,
What are
yeah.
you coming out for? What's your release that you're doing this year that you're with Segmenta? What's the release you guys are doing coming out for?
Yeah, so we are actually going to attempt to finish 3, 4, 5 films, short films, or we don't care how long they are, whether they're 20 minutes or 40 minutes. But we are launching a new film series, and
Mm,
we are sitting on so much stuff that's already been filmed.
yeah.
And so actually the first piece that we're working on right now um, is the first piece that we ever filmed in 2011.
Wow.
And so it's an archery doll sheep hunt
Mm,
and in the mountains of Alaska. And so we just recorded a bunch of stuff for it. The other day, you can't see it, but there's recording stuff right here in the background. And so we set
mhm.
up our studio right here in front of the fireplace.
Awesome.
And so we recorded, but we're coming out with a film series, and we're gonna launch it and put it on YouTube. Like everything's gonna be on YouTube and or whatever other platforms. And so I can't tell you titles as of yet, but the first one that will be coming out will be Toke, which is the archery doll sheep hunt. And then we have 12 years of footage right now in the can that nobody has seen, like
Yeah, wow.
years and years of footage. And so we're just basically going to start putting films together and start coming out with them. But we want to finish 2, 3, 4, 5 of them before we come out with anything, because then we want to stack them out, and we want to
Hmm.
keep the work flowing, and then we want to build enough pieces that can get us to the next year of production to where we can then produce another 2 or 3, another 2 or 3, another 2 or 3.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some really cool work coming out. I actually have a little teaser on my phone that we're building right now. That's pretty sick, man. It's
Hmm.
pretty sick. It's gonna be fun, and like I'm all gray right now, but like the footage that we're looking at, like my beard's all black, and dark. So it's been a long time, but
Yeah,
uh, I think it's gonna be really cool because I just sit in this chair and I kind of tell the story, right?
that's
And
cool.
and yeah, it has a really cool element to it. Yeah.
And so the stuff in Australia, is that the stuff that you filmed around the dingoes and stuff you're coming out to finish up?
Yep. Dingoes, hunting the buff, and
Mhm.
and arrowing like that buffalo right there. Can you see it up
Oh
there?
yeah, I can. Yeah, yeah. How
Yep.
good.
Yep. That guy there. And then we shot some pigs, and then just general wildlife, the green tree ants and the
Mm.
is it bull ants,
Yeah,
meat ants.
yeah. Meat ants, bull ants, big ones.
And then we filmed a couple of snakes. I wanted to find snakes so bad, and we filmed some crocodiles and
Hmm.
um, killed some pigs, and then we baited the crocodiles in with the pigs so we could lay down and film them, and stuff like that. So,
Incredible.
but I love Australia, and I think I'm gonna come back next summer.
Yep.
I think perhaps. And Nick has a new hunting area up in the
Up
Northern
north.
Territory. He's
Yes.
just like dying to show me, and so yeah,
That's
uh,
incredible. The hottest
yeah,
time of year as well, right? Like that's pretty hectic up there. Thick.
yeah,
You're in the
yeah,
oven the whole time.
dude. It's I mean, it is. It's such a wild place.
Hmm.
It's such a wild place, and that, like the crocodiles, for instance, it's just like yeah, it's just a wild place, man.
Hmm.
To be around water like that, and the first one time when I was with Nick, I don't even know where we were. I guess maybe in Darwin, but the sun is going down. It's 90 degrees outside Fahrenheit, and white sand beach and Caribbean green water. And I'm just sitting there, and it didn't hit me. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, Nick. He's like, yeah, mate. Like, how come nobody's swimming? He's like, crocodiles. And I was like, son of a bitch. Like, when we're near these muddy backwater barramundi streams and swamps, like, okay,
It
I get
makes
it.
sense. Yeah, exactly.
But when you're sitting at a white sand beach and there's, girls everywhere in bikinis and guys are, relaxing and having a cocktail, and you're like, oh no, they're still right here.
Yeah, they're just
Like,
hanging out in the water waiting for you to go close.
but I love going there, man. Nick reached out to me, probably, I don't even know, a lot. He'd write me and like, you got to come to Australia, you got to come to Australia. And I never, ever, ever wanted to hunt Australia.
Hmm.
People's respect for wildlife is really important to me. And
Mm.
so that we hunt. And so finally I couldn't take it anymore. And he messaged me. He's like, you got to come to Australia. And I said, hey, man, I said, tell me about the buffalo. So I was hoping, not hoping, but I thought he was going to be like, oh, they're so dumb. There are so many of them. They're so dumb. You can just shoot as many as you want. They're idiots. They just walk around like cows and blah, blah, blah. And then I would just really, honestly,
Rule it
never
out.
answer.
Yeah.
And, and he's like, he just went on and on and on about how amazing they are and how
Hmm.
smart they are and what a wonderful animal they are and how good of parents they are and how
Mm.
good they are. They're horrible for the environment, but what a cool animal individually they are, and how good they are as herd animals, and how big the bulls get, and how they behave differently, and how dangerous they are to hunt. And he had tremendous appreciation for them, respect.
Mm.
And so I was like, I mean, as soon as he finished talking, I was like, I gotta come. I gotta
Yeah.
have
Book my
come.
flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
incredible.
we did, and seeing them was just so, we filmed the dingo stuff, and we filmed like bulls, you know, running at one another, and
Wow.
there in, I don't know, June, July,
Mm.
smashing their heads together. And Nick's like, this happened multiple times. I'm looking at him. He looks at me. He's like, I've never seen this
Yeah,
this time
wow.
of year. He's like, I've never seen this in my life this time of year. This is the first time. And we're filming it, Maddie, to where like it's in ultra super,
Slow-mo. Yes.
and they're just hitting their heads together. And you see all the flies are on their back. All the flies come up and like buzz around and like land back. And then they're stepping back and dust is coming back. It is,
That's
dude. And
incredible.
like the arrow just goes like, I just 12 ring him, and
Wow.
buries up to the fletchings, and he died in like 6 seconds.
Just a double lung?
Yeah,
What?
just hit.
Yeah.
Showed me like basically, where the
The
scapular,
triangle. Yeah.
that triangle, hit him right. And Nick said he's like, shoot a 650 grain arrow,
Hmm.
bevel two blade, shoot him right there. It'll go up to your fletchings, and then he's like, he'll die in 30 seconds. And everything that Nick said happened, except for he died in like 8 seconds.
Yeah, wow. It's incredible. Yeah,
It
I
was
think
a,
it's oh, sorry, go on.
no, it was just amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing to be there with Nick. It was amazing to be in Australia to see those animals. Like, I can't wait to come back.
Definitely. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, a lot of the land where they are, you have to get permission from the elders, meaning the Aboriginal elders as well, which I think is absolutely incredible in that sense. And a lot of them, they will they will use those populations of buffalo to feed their whole tribe and stuff, which is absolutely incredible as well. The other side to that is the funny thing how you wanted to film so many snakes and you couldn't find them. I mean, I haven't done a heat, but the last 5 years I've been trekking through the bush quite consistently, and I never see many snakes. I think I've seen two in the whole 5 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I asked Nick, I was like, man, can we find snakes? Can we hunt snakes? Can we see snakes? And he's like, you're the only dude that I've ever had come here ever that wants to
Everyone's so
find
scared of them, right?
the whole one. And we had seen my crew saw a python. I didn't get to see it. He was like, they saw it and he was gone.
Yeah.
And it was a small one. And then they've seen a couple other species, like a black racer crossed in front of us one time on the road, and it was, gone in a flash. And then I don't even know where we were. But we're on a huge cattle operation, and we were camping, me, Nick, and some of the native guys, some of the Aboriginal guys, some of the elders, and then the photographer, William. And I stepped outside of our tent that night with bare feet, and we're in the leaves, and I was, I had my headlamp on, and I was definitely looking around, but I was barefoot, and I looked down, and I didn't know the species at first, but I was like, Nick, there's a snake right here, right in front of me, 100% a venomous snake. I said, come check this out. And I had William, he went around, grabbed the camera, and he's like, yeah, it's a Eastern brown. And so, okay, this is so cool. And he or she's laying there, and I go, hey, it sounds so stupid to say it out loud right now, but hey, I want to touch it.
Oh.
No, you can't touch it. Like, I go, I just want to touch the very tip of the tail, just to be a jackass and say, I've touched an Eastern brown.
Yeah.
Right? I do that. And he goes, Nick's like, you can't. He's like, they're not like your North American snakes, right? Because even our rattlesnakes and like our cottonmouths and copperheads, like our snakes strike very fast, but it's like 10 times slower than your snakes.
Wow.
Like rattlesnake strikes at you. Like I've been struck out a couple times by rattlesnakes, and it's not that you can get out of the way, because if they catch you off guard, you're going to get bit, but like you can almost get out of the way, right? If you're mentioned, you can almost be like, whoa. And Nick's like, just watch this. And we'd been catching barramundi, and we filleted a couple to eat them on the fire. And so Nick had his fillet knife, and he's like, and we were filming it. He's like, just watch this. So he took the fillet knife and just very carefully went down. A snake was totally chill, wasn't active at all. And he just touched the tip of her tail and moved the knife. And that snake, like if I would have touched the tail, I would have died. Yeah. That snake bit that knife so fast. I was like, are you kidding me? It was just like, and it was over with. And I was like, whoa. And then she went right back to her position, and we filmed her. She's just slowly slithered away. But I was like, yikes. And then we found, this is so crazy too, but we were waiting for one day. It was just super, super hot, and like the buffalo weren't moving, and we were like, oh, I know you know what I'm talking about. We were just cooking. It was like no reprieve. We can't go near the water. There's crocodiles everywhere. Like the area where we can go and like wash our face. So I'm hanging out next to this little dead tree branch, and I just I had a knife on me, and I pulled my knife and I just grabbed the tree branch and I just rolled it over, and there was a little tiny snake like that long curled up in the tree branch, and it was banded, black and white banded, and then had looked to be like a triangle shaped head. And so none of us, and I like snakes, none of us knew the species, because it was a juvenile, whatever it was, a juvenile. Yeah. It was just like, promise me you're not going to touch that snake. And I'm like, I'm not going to touch it. Like we filmed it. Everything's like, because the little ones hold just as much venom as the big ones. Yeah. They don't pump as much into you when they bite you, but they have potent venom. And so Nick's just like, please, like, let's just leave them be. So we filmed them, which was amazing. But and we'd see redback spiders and we'd film huntsmen. We'd capture a huntsman and we'd set them up so we could film them hunting at night. And all this stuff. So it's when we come out with that, it'd be really handsome, and I hope make people of Australia, excited and proud to see it.
Definitely. Yeah. No, it sounds like it's going to be great. In regards to the media side of things, like obviously you guys are putting out a lot of great content and stuff that showcases the wild in exactly how it is, and then you're showcasing the hunt exactly how it is. Like they're longer films. It's not a quick 30-second Instagram reel. It's an hour long film to showcase, hey, this is what a week of hunting kind of looks like. And even then, it's an hour compared to the week, but you're showcasing it more so than I'd say most other media companies ever are. Do you guys ever get, I guess, any backlash from that as well, just from the regular everyday people? And are they even seeing it or not?
Um, we get very little backlash. In fact,
Awesome.
and I'm saying this, but if I get backlash, it's people reaching out and saying, I wish they were longer.
Yeah,
Like I
wow.
wasn't. So we hear some of those people. I do hear, I have had some people write me, not write me, but like just make snarky comments in Instagram or something. They'll be like, if I'm speaking about my experience in a manner of which my mind sees it, some of these guys that are hunters, they'll write me and be like, give me a break. Like, whoopie dang, you shot a deer, give me a break. No one cares, and
Yeah, wow.
could be right, right? Like this is my experience.
Mm,
The film's for us. We tell the story as we see it, as we feel it, in a manner of which we understand this experience. And it's not for everyone, but the majority of people, it gets a lot of praise.
yeah.
And the majority of people will say, man, I was not even ready for that. Like, had no idea that, you know, and I've sent the films too to some kind of pillars of industry, if you will, right? So like um send it to somebody who's not even in the hunting industry, but like a guy way high up at Ford or something
Yeah.
like that at Toyota, and I'll send it to them. They'll ask like, hey, I want to see one of your films because we're going to do some film work with them, and I'll send them the film, and then they'll message me back and be like, I just sat in my office for an hour, locked my door, turned my phone off. I thought I was going to watch like 5 minutes, and I sat there and watched the entire hour. And I've never hunted a day in my life, but that
That's
thing was
incredible.
surprising to me. So things like that will come across, and like I said, it's not for everyone, but generally the praise is people are really enjoying seeing the kind of the
Mm.
rawness.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll often get the negative comments as well. Not, and I mean negative comments from other hunters or something like that, and they'll have their 2 cents to say. And it's always fascinating to me because they've just watched however long, like, oh, you should do an hour, 2 2 hour podcast. They're like, yeah, 2 hours is too long. I'm like, but why are you watching it then? Like, it's your choice. I'm not putting it out there for you. I'm putting it out there for anyone who wants to watch it. I just think that
Yeah,
stuff's so funny. Yeah, and also there was actually a moment in Winds of Adak. Is it Adak? Is that how you say it? Or
it,
yeah, Adak. Yeah. So in that film where you showcase the saving, where you guys the little caribou, the young caribou is caught up in some rope and netting and stuff, and you guys go and cut it out, and it's just like such a little beautiful moment where it really showcases as hunters how much we actually I believe how much we like love the animals and how much we actually really want to nurture and save their natural environment and whatever, and it kind of showcased that really well, I believe. And you guys at the end of it, like, oh, that just like that's the most amazing thing I've ever felt. Like I think you said that something along those lines. I'm like, it is so true. I think showcasing that stuff is stuff that it often gets missed, right? Versus like everyone showcases the kill and the trophy picture and whatever else, and they don't see the other side of it, of what we actually get to go and do in nature.
yeah, totally. And that's that was a happenstance, but that is something that if there's a reason, as we've evolved as a people from hunters and gatherers, or live in the same realm as it wasn't really that long ago that we were hunters and gatherers, and so we care about, we have this idea of conservation in our head.
Mm,
We want to care for the land because that's where we're getting our food, that's where we're able to forage for our tribe, for our family. And in the same sense of, I think we have that innate need to you know pull a truck over and rescue a kangaroo that's been clipped by a car, or even a wild boar that's been clipped by a car. Like, how can you go to an area and shoot overpopulated kangaroos for kangaroo meat, and then on the next side, like, risk your limb to save a kangaroo that's been clipped by a car? And same thing with that caribou is, I'm there to kill a caribou, but this young bull is entangled in rope and he's killing himself. He's choking himself out. He's going to die today should we do nothing. But, and we had the other thing that was really kind of cool of that trip is the area of the island that we were on. We had to go through such dangerous water to get there. When we arrived, the skipper, he said to me, he's like, he literally pointed at me and he goes, "You have maybe an hour to find a caribou, kill the caribou, and get it back on this boat, or we very likely, all of us, are going to lose our lives tonight." Because the wind was blowing and how the currents were going to change and the temperatures that we were dealing with, and then the sun going down. He's like, if you don't get back on this boat in a certain time frame, we very well could all lose our lives tonight. Very, very well. And so to hear a skipper say that, and we had just went through water that was horrendous, like walls of black water, walls of cold, freezing cold black water, disorganized waves, like things that you see sinking crab boats on the deadliest catch, right?
Yeah.
Things that you hear like, oh, 120-foot crab boat went down, the whole crew was lost. Like that's the type of seas that we have the potential to be in, and some that we just went through. And so we cut the caribou free and then went on shore, found some bulls, and I actually ended up, it's not in the film, but I ended up shooting 2 bulls.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Overpopulated there. They need to get knocked down, out of food. So I had 2 tags. I shot one, ejected the shell. And there's another handsome bull right there. He actually only had 1 antler. He broke his other antler off. And I just looked at the crew, and it's funny because like we have to get these bulls back on the boat or we're going to be in big trouble. I have no business shooting a second one because it's just going to add to our time frame and our work. But yet we're also going, these animals are eating themselves out of house and home. We just one's life, 30 minutes ago, 45 minutes ago. Now we have this big bull that's dead, and here's another big handsome bull. And I'm just like, just turned my rifle and just when he went down, and then the skipper, it's not very eloquent, so we didn't film it, but we would normally skin those animals and quarter them and carry them out, but because we didn't have time, we just gutted them. We dragged them all along the beach because we killed them way out at the end of this big long point. We dragged them all along, not the beach, but like the grassy hill country above the beach.
Yeah.
There's one, that's the other thing that's so cool. This whole big area of the island that we were hunting, Natty, there's one area that we could access the beach. Other than that, the waves were too severe and would have flipped us in our raft, and we probably would have had a loss of life right there. But there's one area where the swell comes in, washes against the shore, and then kind of creates like a almost like a riptide, right? Washing out, but because it's creating, almost gave us a river to go up to get to the beach.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where that bull was stuck in the rope. Like had he been stuck anywhere else, we wouldn't even have seen him.
No.
But he was stuck at the tip of that rip. And so we cut him out, killed those other 2 bulls. And then the skipper told us later, we went through hell that night, by the way. I mean, like literal hell in the ocean.
Sounds absolutely terrifying.
Oh, it was, dude, people were white as a ghost. By the time we hit, there was a big volcano that we had to go around. And by the time we hit that volcano, the volcano kind of protected us from the swell. But it took us, I forget, it was like 6 hours or whatever to get around that volcano. But oh my God, I've never been in anything like it. Like the waves, the current is going one way, the wind is blowing another way. And then there's a shelf that goes from, I think it's like 15,000 feet deep. And it comes up almost a straight wall to 500 feet deep. And so all the waves are really pointed.
Yes.
Coming in. Like, man, like I'm like, I don't know if, and I stood outside. I didn't want to go in the cabin. There's 2 steel posts on the outside. I stood outside holding on to that, and so much rain and so many waves were dumping over me that literally rivers were running down my sleeves and coming out the bottom of my rain jacket. And the skipper, he's like, "Donnie, you have to come in here." And I was like, "Man, I'm not coming in there. Like, I want to be out here." For whatever reason, my mind was like, I want to be out here. But he's like, "But we're going to roll. We're more than likely going to roll tonight. Ship will right itself. It's supposed to anyway. But if you're on the outside, like, you're not going to make it." And so like, and then it's going to be done. And And so he's like, you need to come inside. But I was like, hey, if it starts to roll, I'll run inside. But like, and it was just a scary situation, but we got it. We did it. We got those two bulls. They got them on the boat, and we got. But oh man, when we hit land, it was just like,
Relief. Yeah. And it's funny because you say it in that film, you say something along the lines of we almost lost our lives that night. And it doesn't get captured as much, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, that could be true, it could be not. But now hearing that, I'm like, oh my God, like my heart's racing. That's hectic.
there's a couple of times like we're going down a wave, falling, not we're either
Mm.
skidding down a wave, like the vessels just go down a wave, or we're falling like 20, 30 feet in midair. Ooh. And
Oh
I'm holding on to
damn.
this rod, I'm looking into the cabin, and I can see our cameras are just
Oh.
flying through the air. And then I see the skipper flying through the air, and then
Oh God.
get to the wheel so he can steer down the next wave or whatever. Like, so none of that stuff got filmed, but gosh, I wish it did. It was just,
That is hectic.
but it was survival.
I live in the Bay area. And over Christmas there was this hectic like mini cyclone that came through. No one was expecting it. It rocked up out of nowhere. There was I think it was Boxing Day or maybe the day after Boxing Day or something like that. And so all these people were out in their boats, and this one boat, it just the winds were 100 km/h winds. What's that? So 1.6 miles. Sorry, 1.6 K is a mile. So you
Windy,
roughly say,
right?
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It's a lot. Let's just say, in for the Americans, but essentially it was fast, and it literally toppled this boat, and everyone had gone up to the top. They'd gone into the cabin to try and get away from whatever was coming because they heard the winds were coming. They got a quick warning, got into the cabin, and the boat just got flipped. As soon as the winds hit them, it flipped the whole thing, rolled them, but they all got stuck in the cabin. So in my mind, I'm like, hey, you did something smart because if the boat went over and then it got stuck upside down, like then what? You're stuck in this cabin, you can't get out. And so I think there was 11 people who died in that circumstance because they were all stuck in the cabin. Yeah, it's crazy, right? So
Brutal. Yeah,
yeah.
brutal.
Oh, and then I went out not soon after, and we got stuck on a boat where it just the engine died, and so all of those thoughts start to go through your head and everything. We were quite like it's an interesting story, and it played out very well and lucky for us, but it had like its circumstances where it could have been very dodgy, and so yeah, I don't know. The ocean's a very powerful force that no one necessarily understands until you're stuck in a moment like that, right?
Yeah. I was in, I don't know who this dude was, but I was in line at I was flying to Texas recently, and there was a dude in front of me. He was either a Navy SEAL or whatever. He was a bad dude for sure. 100% Australian, American, Canadian. He was a bad dude. There's no
Yeah.
question. He had patches all over his bag from places he had traveled, and and there was one that was an octopus, and it was really well done. It was a really well done logo. I believe it was an octopus, and then the words next to it, it said, "The ocean makes every man a coward." And I was like,
Isn't
if
that the
that is
truth?
a man, like I don't care if you're a Navy SEAL, I don't care. Like the ocean makes everyone a coward.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great. I mean, it's so true, right?
yeah. It's just like there's just nothing in like where you guys are, right? You got salties and you have tiger sharks and you have white sharks and you
Bull
have all these
sharks. Yeah, they're everywhere.
fish and blue ring octopus and all these things that you have warm water, but you have everything else. And then where I was in Alaska, there's none of that, but it's freezing cold, right? And like
Mhm.
even I was with the same skipper last January, hunting ducks and geese, and we went through nothing like we had went through with the caribou, but we went through just this little kind of like this little area we were hunting has so much current going through it. It's like 800 feet deep. It has so much current going through it that the waves get like 10 or 12 feet tall just from
Yeah.
the current through that trench. It's amazing how much, and you see orcas and sea lions, and there's so much life there.
Wow.
We were going through this swell, and it's like I said, it was fun. It was nothing scary, and uh, and I looked around. I was like, "Hey, where's your safety gear?" He's like, "It's in the bow." I was like, "Shouldn't your grab bag be out here so we can grab the bag?" And he's like, "Not gonna matter." was like, what do you mean it's not gonna matter? He's like, you're not making it to shore, man. I'm like, you don't think so? He's like, oh, man. He's like, you're not making it. He's like, he's like, without a life raft, he's like, the grab bag really doesn't matter. Like, you're not making it. I
Yeah,
was just
wow.
like, I don't, I want to at least like be able to grab the bag and like try to do something, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that gave me safety in the moment of when the boat had broken down and whatever. I was in my full spearfishing kit. So I had a wetsuit on, so I was warm. It was stormy, it was crazy weather. Like it wasn't, we shouldn't have been out essentially. It came over pretty fast. So it was the same sort of that 100-kilometer winds that came around really quick. No one really knew it was coming. Same with this storm. It kind of came without us really knowing. But I was like, look, my fins are right there. All I need to do, if we topple or anything, I just need to grab my fins. Like then I'm fine. I'm safe. And that's all good because I can paddle back to shore. So but yeah, it's funny when you get a moment like that and you're like, oh, there's no point, bro. You're not going to live anyway. You're like, oh God. Doesn't fill you with any confidence.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, and like we found this area with really good sea ducks. And I was like, hey, can we hunt? We found it from a mountaintop. I was like, hey, can we hunt down there? He's like, no. He's like, he's like, no way. He's like, where those ducks are right now. He said it was something like 200 feet deep, but he said there's just these sharp, jagged spears that come up that are rock. He's like, you
Mm,
can them from here, but he's like, all that stuff is right there. And he's like, you rip the hull on the boat, and he's like, you literally like the boat is right offshore. He's like, you literally will not make it to shore.
yeah, wow. That's
Yeah,
hectic. It reminds
yeah.
me of Vang Vieng, which is a place in Laos, and I went there back. I used to play in a band, and we were touring quite a lot. But we went back. Just me and the guitarist went back because it's just such a crazy place to be. And so in Laos, they had this river where you'd start at the top of the river, you'd grab a tire, and you'd float down. And as you're floating down the river, they would throw like a rope and bottle out to you, and they'd pull you in. They had these little bamboo bars all down this river. Absolutely incredible place, like massive party place essentially. But you'd go in, and we went on a day where it was completely clear. The water was really clear, but as soon as it gets dirty, you can't see any of it. But the rocks, they're literally just those sharp points everywhere. And I think it was like each week that place would claim 3 lives at least because people would drink, they'd go jump off the edge, which is encouraged, like to jump into the water. But there were so many parts where these rocks were just, you wouldn't expect it to be there. And all these people would jump over head first and just knock themselves off. Yeah, crazy. So actually that whole place has been shut down, which is really sad because of it was like the tourist attraction. It would bring all these people in, so they've knocked all the bars down and everything. So I don't know what that would have done for that little culture and their space, but you can also understand, I guess it was not a great mix of a lot of alcohol and these sharp rocks all throughout this river. But yeah, I jumped into a few places because you could actually see it. You could see where the rocks were. But I remember going on this one swing and they're like, it's all right as long as you don't swing over that way. Swing this way and you're fine. I'm like, imagine telling that to some like person who's completely pissed off their head. Like, of course they're gonna die. It's just hectic.
And especially because if you say don't swing this way, they're like, I'll watch this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're gonna love this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, ridiculous. Something that I forgot to ask before, which I was leading into, but what do you think that hunters could do better in the sense of the media side of things? Like, obviously, social media is this platform where a lot of people want to share and showcase their wins and their adventures and everything that we're doing. But at the same time, that can also be problematic for what we do. What do you think that hunters could do better?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's very problematic, right? I think
Mm,
is the problem isn't hunting. The problem isn't even really social media, although I want to blame it on social media. The problem is people themselves, right? We have
mm,
people that, you know, uh, myself or I don't even like other people that I don't want to name names in case I offend somebody, but some of these guys that I follow, sheep guides or moose guides or whatever. These guys are cowboys from Canada, and they're salt of the earth guys, right? They
mm,
don't Nothing comes out of their mouth that isn't the truth. They work hard from well before the sun gets up till well after the sun goes down, and they have tremendous respect for Dall sheep. A head isn't for sale. You're going to work just as hard as everyone else. I don't care if you're a rich guy and you're looking for a big one. You're gonna hike just as many miles as everyone. Like
mm.
these guys, they tell these stories. They write their captions. They collect their photos. They talk about the sheep. They talk about their clients. They talk about It's great. It's beautiful. It's fine. It's fun. It's adventurous. It's an electronic form of a book, if you will. So I think it's the people that are really behind it. Uh, but I've also seen uh, countless posts and things shared by people, or they're desecrating an animal, or they're trying to be funny around an animal, or they're trying to be funny. I've even seen where they're trying to be funny with an animal that's not even dead yet, and
Mm. Yeah, that sounds
and
horrible.
and smearing blood and funny, and just or boasting about their tremendous success, like another giant buck, and or I don't want to tell you about all the shortcuts that I took to get it, or all the pre-programmed things that I have laid out in order to get this big deer. But um, kind of the deer's antlers represent what is supposed to be some sort of story, when they might not even really know the reason that they're hunting themselves, or they might shoot a pile of ducks, and they just mound up this huge pile of ducks. Or
Mm-hmm.
we shot a limit, we shot a pile. Like, there's no story whatsoever. You're not telling me about the weather. You're not telling me the night you had, about the time you had the night before. You're not telling me about finding the field, or what the feed was going, or where the migration was going. You have no investment at all in the animals, only that you have the decoys, the calls, you found the field, and you put a stomping on these birds, and then you're taking a social picture with, and there's, whether you're a good looking girl or good looking guy, whatever. And I just think it really boils down to who the people are. And just like anything
Definitely.
else, right? You meet if you interview 100 physicians, if you and I sit down together as a partnership and we interview 100 physicians, 100 interventional cardiologists, we're going to be like, these 10 over here are idiots, these 10 over here are amazing, these 10 over here want to be a doctor more than they want to be alive themselves, these 10 want to do it because they want to drive a Porsche and live in a high rise. And
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be able, and it's kind of the same thing with hunting. And unfortunately, um, I wish there was a greater barrier of entry to get into hunting. I wish you had to kind of prove um, your salt before you could get your hunting license. And
Definitely.
I wish you had to take marksmanship courses. I wish you had to take exams on the animals and understand habitat. And I wish you had to recontribute into building habitat and all these things, kind of like what we talked about in the beginning.
Mm.
If someone had to take a hunting course for 8 weeks in their life, or whatever. I almost just said 2 months. This is so stupid. If somebody had to take a hunting course for 2 months, and then go on a hunt, skin an animal, and process, and like do all these things, and then join the military, like we'd have a vastly different group of people. But it's no different than what's that sex thing that's going on right now? OnlyFans. It's no different than like
Ah, yeah.
OnlyFans, right? OnlyFans representing the female population, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
very small population of porn stars, essentially, that are making a lot of money off of degraded men, compared
Mm.
to, same thing is going to fall into hunting. The same subset of people is going to exist in all these different genres. Unfortunately, I think there'd be a lot less hunters. I think this, I don't know this. People like to say this. I think there'd be a lot less hunters if there wasn't social media. I think there'd be a lot less hunters if people didn't have the ability to boast, and like they wouldn't if um but I feel that way about a lot of things. Like, I wonder how people would live their lives if they couldn't share it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That's a very interesting point.
Yeah, like, so I took my son out 2 nights ago. We just got a foot of snow, like I was telling you, and there's
Mm-hmm.
some really hills and waterfalls near our house, and he just wanted to go and explore. So I said, all right, let's go and explore. Do you need to talk to your daughter or son, or
No, no, she's fine. Yeah, she's gone. Yeah. She came in to
okay?
say hey, and I'm just like, get
No,
out. He's on the motions.
but I took him out, and there's these big waterfalls near our house. And so we're over there, and we're coming down this hill. We're all by ourselves. We're coming down this really steep hill in the snow, and I'm walking down the hill, and he's tumbling and rolling and acting like he's free falling down in all the snow. And then he gets my attention. He's like, hey, and he sees two people in the woods, and he's like, hey, and he's just giving me a heads up. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. And so we go down there, and I see this girl, this pretty girl. She's wearing a pink stocking cap, pink mittens, and she's has this little fur coat on, and she's frolicking in the snow while her boyfriend
Follows, yeah.
is
Boyfriends of
just
Instagram.
photographer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Take goes over, and she's like dragging her hand along these boulders and he's taking photos of her, and she's like throwing snow and like jumping through it, and he's taking photos of her, and she's over by everything she's doing. It just looks like she's just happens to be doing this, and he just happens to be snapping photos of this.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of just watching. I'm doing my own thing, but I'm kind of watching him out of the corner of my eye. And so then every time I see him, like she does something, he does something with the phone, and then he shows her, right? She grabs the phone from him, and then she's like, looking at it.
Yeah.
She hands it back to him. They go through this like 3 or 4 of these photo shoots, and then I watched. So it's maybe a mile to walk out, and I see them start to leave, and he's walking by himself, hands in his pockets, just looking around the woods, enjoying the snowstorm, just walking, being a dude. And she's like 50 yards behind him, just on her phone, I'm sure editing. She's going to post.
Yeah.
Right. She's going to post like, what a beautiful afternoon to frolic in the snow. I love the seasons. We're so lucky to be in the Midwest for a late March snowstorm. And it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Like they there to do a photo shoot, and then and that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like I have a dear friend of mine. He is such a soulful dude. We talk about hunting all the time, and his name's Lee Chose, and he's a famous photographer. He's so freaking wickedly talented, it's not even funny. And he'll send me pictures. He'll go all the way up to the northern Canada. He'll load up his dogs in his truck. He's a big dog guy. Loads up his dogs in his truck, loads up all his gear. He kind of looks like a slightly older version than me. And he drives up north, and he'll send me these pictures of his dog, and like his dog with like icicles hanging off of it. And then he'll be holding like 1 Drake mallard or 2 Drake mallards. He'll be holding them. And then later on that day, he'll send me pictures of him like sitting next to a barn on a bucket, and there'd be duck feathers everywhere. And then he'll show me like their carcasses all beautifully plucked, right? And later on that night, he'll send me a picture of them in the pan, where he's cooking them. It's just him and his dog. Like there's no, and this isn't going on Instagram, right? No. He's a professional photographer. Like they might go in a major magazine. There might be a cover of a magazine later on, but he just shoots, and it's just like, and he'll go like, he's not shooting his limit of mallards. He shot 2 mallards because that's what he's going to eat for dinner. He's going to eat one tonight. He's going to eat one tomorrow morning. And like, it's just kind of that, and I'm not professing my stuff onto, I hunt with a group of guys in Illinois, hunt whitetail deer. And I'm hunting with a longbow. And looking for a specific deer, and like I'm really immersing myself into the hunt. And these guys my partners are hunting from blinds. They're using compound bows. They're using electronic Garmin sights. They'll shoot a deer at 80 yards. They want the biggest buck that they can find in the quickest manner they can get it done. Like that. And I'm not taking anything from them at all. That we talk about this all the time as partners. Like, and I love these guys. They're some of my best friends. But and they think I'm an idiot. You are so dumb for hunting with that stick bow. They're like, you haven't even shot a deer in 2 years. But I've almost killed several of our oldest bucks that we have on the farm, and they're just like, oh, but they don't realize, or maybe they do realize, but I get so much from being close to those deer, and like the almost, and like coming to full draw, or missing, like shooting just underneath this world-class deer or whatever. That's my ride.
Definitely.
And our walls look totally different. Like there's my deer, and then there's like there are 30 deer.
Yeah.
Like, but that's how I want to engage in the wild. And so like, I know that's not really what you're asking, but I don't necessarily think social media is the problem. I think the people that are using it are the problem. The people that
trade.
Different things like that. And I wish I could say the name out loud, but I don't want to get mad at somebody, but I saw a female describing herself in an absolutely lewd manner. And she's building a brand around this lewd statement of herself. She's a hunter, and she's building an entire brand about being this lewd, like the statement. I don't want to say it, but because I don't want anyone to come at me, but it's so crude and raw of what she's building her brand on. I just would like, if I was your father, I'd be mortified.
Mm,
Hunting doesn't, do you think hunting needs this? Like, even when I write for our films, I write the film how I want, I write for what my experience was.
yeah.
My word selection is careful in the manner of, if your daughter watches this, or your wife watches this,
Hmm.
or your mom who has never hunted in her life watches this, or your brother who's against hunting watches this, I want them to be able to watch this and for you and him to have a good conversation, or for you and her to have a good conversation. He doesn't have to come on board as a hunter, but in the manner of which I tell the story, I want it to elicit positive conversations about human beings and about hunting and about conservation and about the outdoors.
Mm,
That's my goal, is to
yeah.
tell the story honestly, for real, mistakes and all,
Yes, definitely.
but to do it in a manner to celebrate the wild places and the wildlife and who we are as hunters.
Mm, yeah, it's amazing. I was actually out on the hunt on the weekends. The picture that I showed you before of my mates Ben and Corey and their sons with them, Lukey and Harry. And so we're all out there on the weekend. We all had our compound bows, and Benny was the guy who shot it with his longbow. Shot this deer, and no one else shot a deer on the weekend. And Benny's the one that knocked over this deer, and I just think that's absolutely incredible. But on top of that, they had both their sons there. Corey has a torn ACL. Benny has like a really bad neck at the moment. So they're having to carry their sons up and down this hill. And then it gets to this point where they've now shot this deer. They have to carry their sons plus the deer down the hill. And I think it's just like, not only is that reward in itself, that's a massive trophy moment that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. Like this was a small deer. It doesn't matter the size of the deer at all. The thing is that they got it done with their sons right there, and their sons are just cheering like, yeah, when it all happened. Like they're just so excited to see this whole thing play out. And I just think it's so interesting to kind of see what each person finds a reward, but also just I think that motion of acting with a trad bow, and I'm about to step more into this world. I've hunted with my trad bow before, an older trad bow that I got, but now that I've been gifted this incredible new trad bow, I'm just so excited to kind of start witnessing that and try to get after that. And I was lucky enough to take a pig on the weekend. And I was like, I'm just so excited for that motion as well, that I was in the space where I could even do that with the trad bow. Um, there was
Oh,
another.
you killed it with your trad bow?
Yeah, I got out on the first day. So Benny's actually spent a fair bit of time. Obviously, you know who Joel Turner is. We've got some guys out here, Jack and Ash, who've spent time hunting with Joel Turner, and they did his like course, and they kind of helped teach other people. And Benny's good friends with them, hunted with them plenty. So he gave me like the rundown, and it was transformative. Like literally 6 shots, 8 shots, and I was like shooting way better, and have been consistently shooting better just since doing that. And it's quite fascinating to kind of see that. So yeah, I literally, he gave me a lesson that day. They gave me the bow that night. Like I didn't even know I was getting the bow. And then we went out hunting, and yeah, sure enough, I was able to be successful enough with it. So yeah, pretty fun.
Oh, it's awesome. It is such a cool way to shoot. And Joel is he's just such a cool cat.
You do a fair bit of Tom Clum stuff too, I believe.
Yep. Yep. I went and worked with Tom probably 2 or 3 years. So the mechanics, my mechanics came from Tom.
Mm,
Shoot exactly how Tom wanted me to shoot, but like I developed my own style within like Tom Tom gave me my concrete blocks of like, can't go out here, can't go out here. You can do you, but you have to do it in here. And so he
hmm.
kind of concrete pillars of how to do the mechanics. And then Joel's the one that taught me, like really to embrace like the shot and really embrace have the determination to come to full draw, get into your back, not to get into any sort of panic, and then just to and
Yeah.
pop through and shoot that arrow with absolute determination and just make that shot the best shot each time we shoot, whether it's at a foam pig or a real pig. It's
Hmm.
the finest shot that we can put together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Something that Benny really got me to focus on was watching how your focus comes in and out consistently. So you're focusing on one point, like it might be one hair on the pig, and you're watching that, and at some points you can narrow that focus so finely that that's all you see, and then that's only for a split second, and then it goes boom, and you have this big wide view, and you see the whole pig again, and then you suck yourself back into it, and that's the moment where you need to try to get the shot to release. yeah, it's quite fascinating to watch, just witness that. And you're trying to focus in on it and you're trying to observe it as well. You're like, don't observe it, just focus. Trying to find the right moment. Yeah.
I love it. And I've had, and I hate to even say like this almost, but the farm that I'm hunting in Illinois, like these guys, you know, like the first year, the second year I hunted with a longbow. They're like, oh, you know, like, what are you doing? You're like, the first giant deer that walks past you at 30 yards, you're going to want to be kicking yourself, which has happened. And it's not even entered my mind, but like I've almost, and I mean like almost killed the two oldest, biggest, gnarliest bucks, like that. These guys that were looking all over the place. I literally had shots at them and missed, but just like by a millimeter. Like
Mm,
if things went just because I'm still just kind of learning that whole process and like,
yeah.
you know, like being literally a millimeter. And I can text you the videos later or whatever, but it's like, I mean, my first shot I took, my first day hunting is my first year hunting, my first day hunting in the second year. Like the first day I shot a freaking giant buck, but my arrow hit 1 inch low and went through the brisket instead of the heart. And like, you know, he's still alive and it's just like, oh man, I mean, so close, but like we
Mm,
almost had it done right there, you know. It's just so cool. So cool.
definitely. Yeah, it's such a crazy experience.
Yeah.
Is that your preferred method? Like longbow hunting, that's your go-to if you could for the rest of your life?
Yep. I mean, I'm gonna shoot that for I did PSC did send me some compounds this year, and I am gonna set up a couple of my compounds for different things. One, like if I'm going to Illinois, I don't want to say this and come across as shallow and cheap, but most of the hunting I'm going to do is with a longbow. Okay,
Hmm.
but if I'm running down to Illinois and like I've already killed my buck and I'm running down to Illinois for like 2 days to hunt does with my partners to like knock our doe numbers down, I'm probably going to grab a compound
Definitely.
and just to
Yeah.
where I can and pop and shoot. You know, even with a doe, it takes a lot to get it done
Hmm.
with a longbow. So like, um, and like Joel's the one that actually kind of encouraged me to do this because if you notice Joel, he's an amazing longbow shooter, but 99% of the time when he hunts, it's with a compound.
Mm.
But he hunts with a compound that doesn't have sights on it.
Huh.
So he brings that arrow up to his eye. So he shoots a compound with no sight on it at all.
Yeah, wow.
And he uses a big long loop like this. You can watch him do it. And he brings it all the way up to his eye, you know, wraps his finger, or he has a trigger, and then he's putting the tip of his arrow on what he's learning where to shoot.
Yeah.
He says he's pretty accurate out to about 50 yards with no sight on his bow, which is really cool because it makes your compound way lighter, a
Mm.
way smaller platform, and now you're not worrying about jacking your sight up. Now you're coming to full draw, and you're far more into that pig or deer, whatever it is, right? You're looking at your whole shot process. So lately, I've been hunting with
Hmm.
rifle, and then my longbow because I work for True Velocity, the ammunition company that and firearms company out of Texas. They're one of my biggest clients, and the work that they're doing for the U.S. and Australian military, Canadian military, the work that they're doing for our militaries is wickedly important, and I want to help them in any manner that I can, even if that means I do some hunts with their rounds and stuff like that. And like,
Definitely. Yeah.
I don't know, a couple of times when I've been filming at their office, there's been some, um, it's, I don't want to say it's classified, but we don't talk about it. But like, there's been some really high end special force Australians there when I've been there in
Awesome.
meetings with those stuff like that. So like, I know they've done a lot of work with Australians, and anything that keeps our country safe is very important to me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's so cool. I think especially with the rifle side of things, like I've actually just got my first rifle because as my kids are getting older, my time is getting less in the sense of what I've got to dedicate to hunting. A lot of time when I'm going hunting, I am trying to get meat to keep our long stint of not having to buy meat as a thing. So I'm more so leaning towards go out and shoot a deer as quickly as I can with the rifle, and then spend the rest of the time hunting with either the compound or the longbow. Yeah, I think that's kind of going to be my method to make sure I've got meat. And I think also that takes a lot of pressure off. Like the pressure you put on yourself on a hunt is very interesting, right? And how that can play out and dictate what mistakes you make as well.
I've even had it with the rifle where there's a particular cartridge that True Velocity developed, a 6.8 TVC, and it's unlike any cartridge that's really out there in the world right now. But they wanted me to shoot an animal with it, and I went on like 4 hunts with it, and I could have killed some animals with it. Like I came across this huge black bear, but again, this falls into my mind, and so I got up on this huge black bear, but it was snowing. His
Hmm.
back was all frozen. His hair was encased in ice. He was eating berries, and we're at the tippity top of this mountain, and it was the end of, we were in October, and so we're well above the Arctic Circle, so he's about to den for the winter. And so I was just thinking to myself, and I had the drop on him. Like, we're 100 yards. He's broadside. He's eating blueberries as fast as he can, getting ready for winter. And I'm just, all I have to do is click the safety off, and he's done. He's mine.
Mm.
And I killed an animal with this round. And, and really the company just wants me to do some testing. They want to see how I like the round, things like that. But I was like, if I don't shoot him, if I don't shoot this bear, he's definitely, because I'm the last one that's floating down this river in the Arctic,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it's behind us. So if I don't shoot this bear, he makes it into hibernation. He gets another year. And he was massive. And I was just like, he's not the one. Like, I'm not going to shoot him.
Mm.
And not the one. So I didn't shoot him. And then my hunts just had a series of pitfalls, and I just I didn't get close to the right animal. And then
Hmm.
finally this last year, I get up on a really big caribou in on the Alaska Peninsula, and ended up killing a really big bull with it. But yeah, I was even feeling pressure, like, man, like if I don't get an animal with this round, like I just wanted to make it happen, and make it happen in the right way, and make it, make
Definitely.
it stuff. Yeah.
It takes a lot of discipline to be able to do that as well, right? To be able to walk away from an animal. Something I've actually heard you talk about before is building confidence through discipline, and I think this is kind of definitely a system that I try to use. Like I'll ice bath often. I'll put myself through pretty grueling workouts and stuff. So when I get to that moment when I'm on the side of the hill and I want to give up, I know not to, and I know that I can keep pushing through, and I know that I've got the resilience to kind of do those things. Because learning it in the moment is not when it's going to happen. It has to come from practice prior. Can you kind of talk about some of your discipline acts, I guess, that you do to build your confidence?
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of the things that I do is train with Joel, right? His shot IQ. One of the things 2 or 3 times a year, I'll work with him, train with him, and he's just a really good reminder of hitting your marks with your bow, and then understanding that this whole panic thing that's happening, you're kind of robbing yourself of the scenario of shooting an animal. You're like, when you get full drawn, you're like rushing everything, and you're just like, wow, like you're truncating down that whole system into kind of a mental overload. He calls it, you're going
Mhm.
open loop, right? You're not in the process. But when you slow that down and go closed loop, where you hit your marks and you're pulling through, and you see your arrow on that animal, and then you're pulling through, and you kind of don't care where that arrow goes. Like, you're doing your very, very best to put that arrow in the bullseye. But once it's out of your bow, like, Mother Nature and the world of whatever takes over, right? And the arrow flight is what it is. But the more we suffer in workouts, the more we push ourselves in even in training our minds and reading books and
Mhm.
problem solving, and the more we're shooting our weapons and understanding the biology of the animals and getting our gear right and going into the country, and all of these things kind of lead up to that, um, where you have this culmination of your preparation, your opportunity, right? And the more determined you are to do it right, and doing it right each and every time, even when you're shooting a rifle at the range, like, you're literally sitting there, and you're squeezing through that trigger, and just, and um, I shot recently I shot a belt fed 338 machine gun.
Yeah,
Okay,
wow.
a really
Yeah.
really long, and I was with a machine gun expert, sergeant, shooter, all this stuff, and he's like, "You want to shoot this gun, Donnie?" I said, "Yeah, man, I want to shoot it." So I got behind this gun, and I'd shot machine guns before, but no one had ever really taught me how to shoot a machine gun.
Mm.
It's like, all right, go ahead, and so I was squeezing the trigger, and I was squeezing the trigger, and I was squeezing, and I'm just sitting there squeezing, and the gun goes off. And when I got done, I looked up at him and he's like, he's like, were you squeezing that trigger like a sniper rifle? And I go, yeah. And he's like, oh, that is awesome. He's like, that's not how you shoot a machine gun, but that is awesome. You just kind of mash that trigger and like, you hold it on target. And but that's for me, whether I'm shooting my bow or shooting a centerfire rifle or a BB gun, it's always like,
It's the
even when I'm
discipline,
using
isn't
my
it?
fingers, I get into my back, I find my sight picture, and I'm just like, it's just kind of the way it is. But I think
Mm.
slowing down, I've rushed shots before.
Hmm.
They always go, sometimes it kills the animal and sometimes it kills them really fast. It almost always goes horrible. And
Yeah.
when you slow that down, when you take that 2 seconds and you turn that 2 seconds into 5 seconds, which you really have, right?
Mm.
It's ourselves, we have a half a second, and you really have like 5 or 8 seconds or whatever it is, right? And you come to full draw. Like if you had to come to full draw, one thing that I'm going to do this next year that I haven't done in the past, when you come to full draw on an animal or find them in your scope, and instead of rushing through your process, you just kind of sit there, right? Arrow on the animal, you're at full draw, and you just kind of sit there, and then you're getting into your back, and you elongate that process. It is so freaking rewarding, and the picture
Mm.
becomes so much more clear. I shot a big elk. Actually, you can't really see him; he's up there. But several years ago, I was in Nevada, and I had this big bull at 18 yards, and he was facing us, and I was down on my knees, and I had my release on it was a compound, and I was just sitting there, and we were in the mesquite, and it was really, really, really thick and dense. And he turned, and when he turned, I came to full draw, and he took a step. He's trying to get our wind because our wind was kind of blowing like this.
Hmm.
He turned, and I saw his shoulder walk into this little triangle, like 12 inches by 12 inches, tiny, and the rest was a mess. And I had my pin right on his shoulder, and I shoot when I shoot a compound, I shoot a hinge with a safety.
Yep.
I clicked my safety off, and I was just sitting there, and my pin was just floating on his shoulder. And he was sitting there, and all he has to do is really take another step, and he's out of my life.
Yeah.
He could take another half step, and I'd still have a shot because his lungs are so big.
Hmm.
But beyond that, and he's gone. And I was just sitting there, and I kind of like popped in. I was like, "Oh, hey, shoot him! Like you're like it's good." And then I was just like, "Oh yeah, shoot him!" And I just literally started to rotate the release, and just arrow went away, and he ran away. And a good friend of mine was calling for him, and he looked at me. He's like, "What happened?" I was like, "I don't know." Like, I don't know. The arrow went. He's like, "Did you hit him?" I was like, I don't know. It happened so fast. I think so, And it's like shot into this wall of brush, and we watched the film back, and I smashed him. Um, but elongating that time, right, and really,
Mm.
really shooting. One thing that I'm going to do this year that I haven't done in the past is that like let's just say this year in Illinois, let's just say I had probably 10 opportunities to shoot does,
Yeah.
and I because I was waiting for a giant buck, hunting a giant buck, hunting an old buck, like, and a doe would walk by, and I'd always tell myself like, I'll shoot a doe tomorrow. I'll shoot a doe tomorrow. I'll shoot a doe. Like early on, I was like, I'll shoot a doe early season. Well, then I didn't hunt early season because I was in Alaska, and I was like, well, I'll shoot a doe early in October. Well, I didn't travel there early in October because I had some work stuff to do, and then it hit late October. And then late October, November is when I'm hunting these big old bucks. And so like these does are walking by at 10 yards. And I'd be like, well, I'm not going to shoot it because I'm focusing on it. And I think this year I'm going to shoot every single one of those deer.
Hmm.
Like if they walk by, I'm shooting them. Like I'm gonna practice that critical second. I'm gonna practice Joel's shot IQ and get into my back and aim really, really well and just pull through and pop. And I'm gonna start stacking does and taking shots that, like just kind of building that repertoire of getting that down, because then that 7-year-old buck's going to come strolling by, and it's just going to be like another doe.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like building the notches, right?
Yeah,
Earning your
it's just,
stripes. Yeah.
yeah. And squirrels and like, whatever else. But I think just doing difficult things overall, whether that
Hmm.
be room or I've been training a lot with jujitsu is something that I've kind
Oh,
of
cool.
become quasi addicted to.
Yeah.
And yeah, just love the difficult situations and
Hmm.
being scared. And I can't even tell you how many times I've been in Alaska and just rain is pouring down, like have to go 10 miles. And it's like, no one's getting you to that point. Like
No,
you're the only
exactly.
getting there, man. Like, yeah. And then I think about friends of mine that are, SEALs and Green Berets and Army Rangers. And I think about like those guys have to do stuff like that, except for like dudes are shooting at them when they're doing
Hmm.
that, and it's like gnarly. But I think we just keep doing difficult things, right? And eating well and sleeping well and maintaining our relationships and working on our brain. I think that's all as human beings. I think the easiest thing, um, I see all this diet stuff and I see all this, like doing all these different things. It's like, man, just eat lean proteins
Hmm.
and just do your workouts and move your body and read books and eat fruit and drink water and care about who you spend time with, and you are going
Hmm.
to be a superhero.
Definitely. Yeah. Also find like taking that approach, especially on your relationships and whatever else, it makes everything just so much easier. You don't have all the drama, right? When you're putting an actual effort into it. And like for me with two young girls, like the more effort I put in while I'm at home every other day or every day, it means that I've got the chance. Here we go. Got a little runner in right now. But it gives me the opportunity. You go see mummy? You go see mummy? It gives me the opportunity to actually get away from all and whatever else because I'm putting in the time, I'm putting in the effort, I'm making a really conscious effort with all of my relationships, especially with my wife. We have a really good relationship, very open, very communicative in general. And always people are like, wow, you guys are like, especially in her world, a lot of people are like, oh, wow, it's such a rarity to find someone that can communicate like that. I'm like, no, it's because we work so hard at it. Like, it wasn't easy to start with, and we kept building and building and building. And now we're in a position where we're both so happy with what we have, and we're able to go and do the things that we want to because we voice it and we talk about it often. Like, hey, these are the trips I'd love to do this year. And it's a communicated piece. And we're like, okay, well, let's work towards helping each other to do those things. So, yeah, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, it's important. It's important to have that foundation and to build it and to be smart about it and driven in a particular direction. Yeah, it's really
Mm.
smart.
Yeah, definitely. I forgot to ask you how long you've got, time wise. You got time for
Whatever.
a few more questions?
Yep. Doesn't bother
Amazing,
me.
amazing, good stuff. Well, growing up like as an animal lover, there was definitely like charismatic animals. Like I played a lot with, I guess like your safari animals and stuff like that in Africa. Oh, sorry, the African wild, and it's kind of built up this thing for me where I've got a block around. Essentially, I don't love the format of it. I understand a lot of what happens in South Africa is actually helping the species and it helps them to grow. And the conservation that goes on there is wild. Like I never knew that side of it until I got into hunting. I think that's probably the case for many people. But are there animals where you've kind of thought that way, where you were so attached to them and you never thought you would hunt them, and then now you've kind of transitioned your thought process on that, or you have now hunted them at all?
Um, I've done it a couple of times. Well, should I say a couple of times? I never ever thought that I would hunt a mountain lion.
Mm,
Never, ever. I had no interest in running an animal with dogs. Had no interest in, frightening an animal to the point of basically kind of herding it through the forest until it would tree itself or get out on a cliff or whatever, and then the hunter would come up and shoot it. And never ever thought, never had an interest in doing it. And then a good friend of mine, Ben Storak, he owns an area in British Columbia called Arcadia Outfitting, and he does black bears and lions and cougars, they call them, and he does California bighorn sheep, and then he does some mule deer. But we've been friends for a long time. We filmed many times together, and he guides up in the Northwest Territories. So him and I have hunted several times for Dall sheep, mountain caribou, things like that. And he invited me up. He said, "Hey, I want you to come up lion hunting." And I said, it's not for me. And and he kind of threw my words back in my face. He's like, "Well, you've never lion hunted." And I said, "No, I haven't." And he said, "Well, so how can you talk about it? How can you tell me that you don't want to do it? You've never done it before."
mm,
And I said, "That's a good point." And he said, "Have you ever met a houndsman or been around the hounds?" I said, "Never." And he's like, "I think you'd really appreciate it." because I hunt with hunting dogs, right?
Yeah.
I run dogs for ducks and pheasants, and so he's like, okay, it's like, we're doing a trip this February. This was a few years ago, and went out there, um, met the houndsman, met the hounds, and we started kind of finding a track of a big male cat, and basically Ben said, let's hunt lions, and if we tree one, and right when you get right up to it and we tree one, and you're just like, hey, this isn't for me, Ben's like, that's no problem. Like, there's no pressure to shoot it. He's like, I have a tag also. And he's like, I'll probably shoot it, because he's trying to get the cougar numbers down, so that because they're really hard on the sheep in his
Hmm.
area. And the biologists really want him to take the line numbers down. So anyway, I was basically against that. But then when I went and did it, and I understood the hound's role and the lion's role and the houndsman role, and the experience that I went through, where we tracked our cat like well over 12, like 20 kilometers without the dogs even being involved with the hunt, because we were on these sheer ice cliffs, and the houndsman was like, there's no way I'll release my dogs. He's like, they'll all die today. They'll all literally run off these cliffs, and the cat, it's just way too dangerous. He's like,
Mm.
until the cat gets up into this forested area, I'm not going to release my dogs. And so we tracked this cat for, I forget what it was, 19, 20, 21, 22 kilometers, whatever it was. And we actually, I could have killed that cat with a rifle with no dogs at all. Like, we got to within about 50 yards of him, and he was on top of a doe mule deer that he had killed from the night before, or early that morning, was eating her.
Mm.
And so we got up, and he'd slowly walked up this other hill. Like, we totally could have killed him. And he ended up making it all the way up into this really snowy area. The snow was like mid-thigh deep, and he went up in there, and he followed this river system up there. It was so cool, because the snow was deep. The walls were kind of not cliffs, but very, very steep,
Yeah.
and huge conifers. And this cat, like, you could see his tracks bounding through the snow, and you could see
Wow.
big wisp of his tail in the snow. You'd see this
Hmm.
big drag. We ended up getting up there, and I was just going to town, man. It was such a physical hunt. I was just
Hmm.
crawling through the snow, going after these dogs, and they ended up treeing the cat. And I got up there before anyone. There's one other guy up there with me, but I got up to this cat before anyone, and that cat was just sitting in that tree, and just hulking muscles, and a huge fat belly, a huge belly. He was just sitting there, man, like bigger than life, huge head. And I thought he was going to be terrified.
Mm.
He'd be terrified of these dogs. And he was just sitting there in a limb, probably 15 feet off the ground. And he was just literally looking at the dogs like he could care less. And he was just
Yeah.
on this, looking around. He could care less. And then he ended up, more guys came, photographers and like the houndsmen. And the cat ended up bounding out of the tree, running down, getting to another tree. So I would go down there. It's quite a distance. So he went like another mile and a half. And I get up on him, and he's standing in this tree. Now I can barely see the cat. He's up where it's pretty dense. He's still only probably like 25 feet off the ground. There's one little sliver like that behind his front shoulder. And I have my bow, and Ben's like, what do you think? And I'm like, is it a Tom? He's like, huge Tom. He's like, it's a huge Tom, probably a super old Tom. I was like, okay. I was like, I'll shoot him, but we're going to eat him. He's like, yep, whatever. And so I came to full draw and shot him, and ended up being so funny, because the houndsman, and I very much appreciated him, but he told me this cat was super old.
Mm.
Like, this cat's super old. Like, dude, he's like one of the biggest cats I've ever killed, super old. And then we ended up going to the biologists, who were super thrilled that I killed this cat, because this cat had been wreaking havoc on the sheep. But the cat was 185 pounds, and it was
85 kilos, 83 kilos.
yeah, and he
Yeah.
was 3 years old.
It's
3 years old.
crazy. Yeah.
He had grown to that size in 3 years. And then we ended up, and that was a classic. Like, I talked to those guys, like, hey, we're eating this cat. And the two guides were like, we're not eating the cat. And they're like, they're not good. I'm like, well, that's okay. So they're not good. We're eating it. And he's like,
Mm.
well, you can eat it, but we're not eating it. And I was like, okay, whatever. Long story short, we ended up cooking the cat, and it was literally the best wild game I've ever had. And so that was one element there where I never thought I would hunt lions. And now I would actually go and do it again. Like it was, and talking to the biologists of that whole region, they're like, we need to get our cat numbers down. They're so successful at hunting the deer and the sheep that the deer and the sheep really don't have that much of an opportunity to even, escape them. They might escape them today, but they're going to get, caught tomorrow. But I've not ever hunted, like in my mind's eye, I would never hunt. I'll explain it one way. So I was about to say I'd never hunt elephants. I'd never hunt giraffes, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Explain it to you this way, Maddie. If you called me and said, hey, uh, a buddy of mine just gave me a free giraffe hunt in Africa. He wants you to come down and shoot a giraffe too. Trip is totally paid for. Everything's 100% free. Come down and we're both going to shoot bull giraffes. The answer is no. I have zero interest in it. I don't care if it's free. I don't even care if you're going to pay me to come and do it. Okay, the answer is no. But if you call me and go, hey, a friend of mine just called me and their ecosystem that they're managing has way too many giraffes. Like we need guys to come in here and shoot 5 bull giraffes over the next 3 weeks. We need to remove 5 cows. We need to remove 5 cows from the herd. We need to get these numbers down. They're eating themselves out of house and home, blah, 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 blah. I would fly to Africa and I'd come there and I'd shoot 5 cow giraffe with you. Right.
Yeah.
So, if it's something like that, then it moves it forward in my mind, and we're able to butcher it, get the meat to villages, eat some of the themselves, remove the giraffes, which increases the health of the herd. Like I've been with Joel before, Joel Turner. I've been with Joel. I've not ever been a hunter, but I've been with him. He leads the SWAT team for Washington State.
Yeah.
He teaches SWAT guys. So when they're having issues with an elk herd, they have a disease there called, I forget what it's called now, but basically the hooves, I think it's like hoof rot or whatever, but their hooves get this bacteria in them from a snail, and their hooves just continue to grow and they don't calve off at all, and then their feet become rotten in the elk, and it's terrible, and the elk can't walk, and they end up just succumbing to a mountain lion or getting hit by a car, or just literally they tip over because they can't walk anymore because their feet are so sore. And so I've went out with Joel multiple times now where we'll sneak up on a herd. And I mean, we're doing this in like April when, elk season's in September. We're doing this in April. And we're sitting there with biologists and conservation officers and troopers, and we're all, okay, that guy, okay, that guy. And then literally on 3, they're like, and we're shooting like 4 or 5, like head shooting these things, taking them out of the herd. Like that's an element where you can kind of pop over onto the conservation side, and there's work to be done. Sometimes that's the type of work to be done. But as far as like, do I have ambitions of having 100-pound tusks on the other side of my fireplace, or, am I a collector of species? Do I have to hit my North American 29? Do I want to kill my my Grand Slam of sheep? Like that stuff doesn't exist in my mind. I might inadvertently do some of that stuff, but I don't go out to tick these species off and go down that realm. And so like I have friends of mine that are addicted to, and I don't mean addicted to in a negative way, but they live
to get this Grand Slam.
They live to hunt leopards. They live to hunt lions in Africa. It's what, to them, that's what hunting is.
Yeah, wow.
And me, that's the furthest thing. I'm not saying that that's not hunting, but that's the hunt that's the furthest for me that I would have any interest in. But to them, they go to Africa every year lion and leopard hunting. Like to them, it's just epitome of hunting. So
yeah, it's so interesting. It's interesting talking about the overpopulation thing too, because essentially over in America, you guys have such great conservation versus here in Australia, everything that's introduced species is, in the government's eyes, should be eradicated because it's overpopulating, it's taking away from the natural habitats, etc. But you go out and you get to see these species and they're just so beautiful in their moment. And I do have interest in hunting all of the huntable species here in Australia, but essentially from what the government tells us is that they are all overpopulated and they are making a huge dent on the environment. And so to me, that's like, well, it's not a no-brainer, but it makes me go, okay, well, of course I'd love to hunt them and once again, eat them if possible. Probably not a wild dog or something like that, or a fox. Probably wouldn't touch them, but I have heard of
Yeah.
it happening. But yeah, it's very interesting. And like obviously, I don't know, do you guys talk about overpopulation a lot over in America? Like is it something that does get hit on the nail in the public eye quite a lot, or is it pretty much the opposite and it's just the hunters doing the damage or the yeah.
I mean, it gets talked about. Hunters, sometimes hunters that are either just they don't really have another reason. Like if you're a hunter and you're a serious hunter but you really don't know why you hunt, or you really don't know um, where the ideas of hunting kind of apply in the ideas of conservation, and you're not educated on it, or you haven't really just embodied the work. Somebody might challenge you on why it is that you're hunting, but some of those guys would be like, well, these deer are overpopulated, geese are overpopulated, like if hunters don't kill them, they're gonna eat themselves out of house and home. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. And then I've also heard, you hear people sometimes in the States, I don't know if this happens in Australia, but a lot of times people will say, whether it's true or not, I have no idea, but they'll say insurance companies actually put a lot of pressure on states to keep deer numbers down because they don't want to pay deer car collision claims. And so they're
Oh,
saying
wow.
like if some huge insurance company has 1 million claims in the state of Pennsylvania because the deer population is absolutely booming and it's smashing cars every night, you know, Allstate might say, hey, we'll pay $5 million to your conservation plan in Pennsylvania, but we got to get these deer numbers down. And I've heard about things like this, and whether that's true or
Hmm.
not, I'm not sure. But it wouldn't be out
Wouldn't
of the realm
surprise
of
me. No.
that's for sure. But I've also heard like in some of these areas where some of the more wealthy houses are, and some of the more ritzy neighborhoods where there are deer, like these people are tying bandanas. Like they'll literally feed deer and they'll put bandanas around their necks and they'll name the deer.
Yeah.
We'll give them neck collars and name collars. And some of those areas, like they used to bring in archers, right?
Mm.
Or they bring in sharpshooters. Like they'd bring in police sharpshooters to literally like snipe deer at night. Or they bring in archers. But now these people want to pay, like you can shoot a deer and you can shoot a deer and remove it for cents on the dollar, and then that meat is going towards homeless shelters, or
Mm.
or one of the cops is taking it home himself. But these people want to pay like $5,000 a deer to have it, basically to have its reproductive organs pulled out, or to give it a contraceptive, or to give it a sterility drug or something like that. So the doe still exists, but now she can't reproduce fawns. And I'm just like, that is messing with Mother Nature. And also, like,
Mm.
to pay that much money to make a doe unviable or a buck unviable is to have non-viable embryos. Like, to me, that is just
That's
so
wild.
stupid. And when you can remove some of these individuals, but um, I've not chased I've not chased too many animals that I haven't wanted to hunt. Most of the stuff, it really kind of drives me to it. But
Mm.
um, to each their own. Hey, like and
Definitely. Yeah.
I, like the guys that go to Africa and do the Africa stuff. Like I've been invited to Africa quite a lot, and I've almost went a couple of times to some really wild places. Kind of like Nick invited me to Australia. Like I had zero ambitions, right? I guess the second one would be the buffalo. I had
Mm.
zero ambitions ever of hunting an Asiatic water buffalo. Zero ambitions of going to Australia other than for any other reason to see Australia. I
Yeah.
want to see the snakes. I want to see the crocodiles, the sharks. Well, I want to see the spiders. I want to see the deserts and the oceans and all the. I want to see all that stuff, but to go there and hunt, no, thank you. And but when Nick told me about the buffalo, instantly I was like, okay, maybe I do want to hunt these things. And then now that I've killed one, like it was awesome,
Yeah.
and I went and saw hundreds, if not thousands. I bet we saw thousands, but we killed one, right? And then
Mm.
I went back 2 or 3 years later, and I killed none. But the Aboriginal guys that we hunted with, they killed like five for their village, and so we helped them. They shot the buffalo, and we helped them butcher them and get them back to the village. So, but that was equally as rewarding.
Yeah, it's incredible. How about I mean we kind of touched on it before, but near misses. You talked about obviously at ADAC with the waves. Is there any other like near misses that kind of really stick out for you in the sense of like not necessarily life threatening, but like an animal charging or yeah, the situations that you've been put in that you're like, oh God, that could have gone so wrong.
Yeah, most of it revolves around either weather, or rafting down rivers and getting caught in log jams, getting caught in sweepers. Do you know what a sweeper is?
No, what's a sweeper?
Oh, yeah, they're a lot in Alaska and Canada. So like along these riverbanks, when the rivers flood in the springtime, the sides of the riverbanks will cave in and
Mm.
have these spruce trees on them, and the spruce tree will fall into the river and it'll sit right above the current and it'll go all the way across the river. So when you're coming down with a raft,
Oh wow, yeah.
you hit it, but there's so much flow that when your raft hits it, it actually pushes the raft up on a log, flips, and when that tree falls over the river, all of its branches on the bottom are poking down in the river. So it's a very dangerous situation. A lot of times, your body gets caught up underneath the tree, and you drown or you succumb to hypothermia.
Yeah, wow.
I've I've flipped a few rafts in my day, and it's terrifying to do so. And the waves in Adak, I've had to cross several cliffs in the ice and snow hunting Gall sheep in October, where you lose your footing, you're going to lose your life. You're going to slide down a 100-foot slope, and you're going to fall 1,000 feet straight down. And same with hunting that line. There was a couple of cliffs that we had to cross that it's not that there was a couple of cliffs that I've crossed sheep hunting that if you fall, you're done. It's over with.
Mm.
But there was a couple of spots with the lion that we crossed that if you fall, you're not done. But if you fall and you can't stop sliding, and mind you, from us to the cliff is glare ice.
Yeah,
So
wow.
if you can't like out and like stop yourself, like you're gonna fall hundreds of feet to your death. And so, elements like that, bears, I've been charged by a half a dozen or more bears. And, but it's never, a bear has never, I've had a couple of scary charges, but none of them have ever made contact with me or anything. They've all stopped. I've never had to shoot, we had to shoot one grizzly bear. That was, we were trying to kill anyway, but he was gonna make contact with us. He was coming pretty hardcore.
That's crazy. See, to me, that bear's a much scarier thing to hunt with compared to like the spiders and snakes and stuff that we have here. Only because you obviously hear the worst of the worst in the sense of like the bear charges and you see the attacks and stuff, and that kind of stands out. But yeah, they seem pretty scary to me.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that they're so big and powerful and they can run so fast, right? But
Mm,
most of the time they run the other way.
they're scared
Most of
of you. Yeah.
99% of the time they run the other way and they don't want anything to do with you and they're scared to death. Even the biggest of bears, where you're like your spiders and your spiders and snakes. Like you said, most of the time you don't even see them, right?
Mm.
Like
But that's also the issue,
the
right?
snake, yes,
Yeah.
the snake
Yeah.
is so long gone, but by the time you get to an area, but should you stumble upon one, and I have, like it's almost over with before it begins. Like you
Mm.
get bit by your top 5 species.
You're done.
If they've dumped,
If you're in the wrong location, you're done. Yeah.
done, you're done. Yeah, and but like the bears, bears are they definitely get your attention, especially when you bump into one or you have to go into an area. I've stalked a couple of caribou and moose where like I'm in the alders, and you can see fresh mounds of bear poop from last night, and
Hmm.
you're in the alders with your bow. I don't have a gun, and I'm sneaking up on a moose or a caribou, and I'm like, like I'm literally using bear trails to sneak closer to this thing, and you're like, I'm just hoping that this colossal brown bear or grizzly bear isn't curled up like a dog sleeping right here, because if I wake him up, it's not going to be good. He's not going to be
Definitely.
happy to woke him
Yeah.
up. He's going to be, what's going to happen is he's going to wake up terrified that I'm going to hurt him,
Mm.
pounce on me to get rid of the threat,
Yes.
right? Often that's what it is he's so scared. He's attacking me because he thinks I'm going to attack him. And
Mm.
so
Yeah, makes sense.
it's swift.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You've been on a lot of podcasts and there's some really cool stories out there that you've told. Ones I'd love to hear, but instead I'm actually going to go the opposite route and say, is there any stories that you have never really got to tell that you would love to tell, in the sense of some adventures in the wild? While you're thinking about it, I'll reference like people to go and listen to the episode you did with Rogan, a while back, where you talked about the living with the wolves and when you were doing your salmon, biology stuff, the interview that you did with Andy from Stalk Outdoors, one of the guys from here in Australia. Andy's a good guy, and you did an interview with him recently. He talked a lot about the mountain lion, but also just a few of the other encounters that you've had. So is there any stories that you've not yet got to tell that you'd like to tell?
I mean, there's quite honestly, there's a lot.
I can imagine, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories that I just kind of, like either they're in there and like a lot of people obviously ask about the wolves and bears and things of that nature, but I mean, that's a really good question. I have a couple of that that are interesting. Um I did a hunt with a buddy of mine. We were hunting mountain goats and black bears on the coast of Alaska, and it's not a huge story, but we had so many black bears near our camp that every night when we weren't the hunt had two pieces. Either we would climb all the way up onto the top of the mountain, we'd hunt goats for a couple of days, and then we'd come down, which we did. We hunted goats for a couple of days. We couldn't find a billy we wanted to kill. So we came down and we decided to hunt black bears, but there were so many black bears uh, in this place that we were hunting that we would go over to this estuary where this salmon stream had dumped out of the mountains into the ocean, and we'd go over there and hunt at night until the sun went down, and then we'd have to hike bear trails back to our tent at night.
Yeah.
And so we are literally getting charged repeatedly by bears at night, so we can't even see them because the vegetation is too dense.
Yeah.
So they're jaws. You've heard that bears do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you literally can hear their teeth smashing together just maybe 20 yards away, and then they charge you, and you see all the brush just, and they come, but then they stop, and you go another 30 yards, and another one is gnashing his jaws at you and charging, and like every night we had to go through this gauntlet of these bears. And then one time we got fogged in, and so we're sitting in our camp. It was kind of on this mounded island, and we're eating dinner, and these two black bears come out, these two big boars come out, and they start fighting.
Hmm.
And we're quite literally eating our dinner, and these bears are fighting, and now they're coming into our camp. And so we had to stand up and back off. We had to walk out of our camp. We're sitting there with our mountain house dinners, eating dinner, and we're both standing next to each other eating our dinner, and these two boars are fighting where we
Wow.
were sitting, and they fought all the way through our camp, and then they, one ran the other one off, but then we went back and sat down, but we laughed about it afterwards.
Nighttime entertainment. Yeah.
And so but I haven't told this story in a while, and people kind of love it, but so I was hunting with a friend of mine in Alaska, and I was hunting moose. We all had bear tags too, because this area that we were at, they want the bear numbers brought way down, so we all had bear tags. But we were sleeping in a Cabela's tent, and it was this style tent where it had a big vestibule in the front, then it kind of had like a hallway almost, and then a big sleeping chamber in the back. It was kind of this expedition style tent. The front was kind of a sitting area with chairs, and we were hunting from a power boat. So we'd take this power boat into an area, set up a camp, and then we'd hunt from the power boat. We'd take it to different sloughs. Like we'd take it to a slough, we'd hike back in miles, we'd call moose, hunt that whole area. We'd come out, float back to camp, calling. And the next day we'd go to another slough, and we're just covering big areas. And
Amazing. Yeah.
we're in this tent, and my buddy wakes up and he goes, hey, there's a bear. And I've went to Alaska now. I've probably been to Alaska, let's just say 50 times, something like that. And I've slept thousands upon thousands of nights in Alaska in a tent. And I've had many people wake me up in the middle of the night like, hey, I hear a bear, right? Whether it is a bear or not, I've been woken up a lot. So this guy wakes me up, he's like, hey, there's a bear. And I go, man, there's not a bear. I go back to sleep. He goes, there's a bear. And I go, there's not a bear. Just go back to sleep. And I'm laying there on my side, and he gets up and he has a pistol, and he grabs his pistol, puts one in the chamber, and he's sneaking out of the tent. And I'm just like, whatever. So he sneaks out, and he's outside the tent. He's outside the tent for 30 seconds, and bang, bang, shoots twice. I'm like, geez, I'm like, what? And we were hunting with a native guy, a good friend of mine named Sean Hoffman. He's the best moose hunter I've ever hunted with. He's a Athabascan Indian, and he talks really slow.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, hey, what are you guys shooting now? And my friend Nick goes, I shot a bear. And he goes, oh, okay. I'll skin it in the morning. Go back to sleep. So I'm like, so I go out there and I'm like, you shot a bear? And he's like, yeah, I got him. Like, here he is. And he was a black bear, or whatever. So he shoots him. And um, well, then it comes to me in the morning. We're kind of talking about this and remembering the night. And he's like, I told you there was a bear. You didn't believe me. So I go, wait a minute. And our tent was set up in these trees. And I go, you woke me up last night and said, there's a bear. And he goes, yeah. And I go, Nick, I sat up. We were all sleeping on cots. I go, I sat up and I stuck my head out of a hole in our tent to look around for the bear. I remember doing this now in the morning. I didn't remember last night, but I remember doing this. But where I was sleeping, there wasn't a hole. And so we go around to the side of the tent, and here the bear had ripped out an entire
Oh my
window section
God.
and was in the tent. This is what woke Nick up. The bear was in the tent standing on my cot.
No.
Yeah, with his muddy front paws were on my sleeping bag, on my cot. And then
Holy
when Nick
heck.
scared him and the bear ran out, and he went out and shot him. But
Oh my God.
we were both brushing our teeth in the morning, and he's like, I woke you up. And I go, yeah. I stuck my head outside the tent. I didn't see anything. And I was like, wait a minute. How did I stick my head? There's only one opening in a tent. They're both doors. Like, you can't open a window in a tent. What was I sticking my head out of? But it didn't even occur to me that night. But the bear had tore a hole in the tent and then crawled in there. It was on my sleeping bag, on my cot. But
Hey,
um,
that is absolutely wild. That is incredible. And I mean, that's the sort of stuff we were talking about when we introed into this podcast, right? Like the stuff like that you never ever get to see unless you're in the wild. I'm sure not many people want to go out and witness that for themselves in the sense of a bear being right on top of them. But you take it back to just even the smallest animals, like watching caterpillars in the wild or something. Like I watched this trail once of caterpillars, these hairy caterpillars, and they were all following each other in this massive line and went for like 400 meters. So you think about these small little 1 inch grubs and 400 meters worth of them. Like there was thousands of them. And it's just the way that they go from one nest to the next nest that they're going to build. But stuff like that, you never see it unless you're in the wild. It's just absolutely incredible. I have one last request from you, Donnie. It's not a question. Oh, it is a question because I have to ask it of you. But how would you feel about me playing, not now, but I'll play it in the audio of who we are to wrap up this podcast? Would you be happy for me to share that audio with everyone?
yeah, that'd be just fine. Just the audio or the visual as well? Do people
I'll,
watch?
I'll, I mean, I'll just share the audio part. It'll just be on the podcast, not on the actual video recording. So if you're watching the video recording, the request is that you go and watch it on Donnie's channel instead. And if you're not already, head across and follow Donnie's stuff. Like follow the YouTube stuff. Like you said, you've got some exciting stuff coming, but also the stuff he's already got up there is incredible. It's hours of great entertainment in the sense of what we do out in the wild, or what Donnie gets to do out in the wild. And then also across all social media platforms. It's all, I think it's just Donnie.Vincent, isn't it? On
Yeah,
most.
Instagram is underscore Donnie underscore, I think, Vincent.
Donnie
I think.
underscore Vincent. Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Well, Donnie, thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate this. Took a little bit for me to track you down, but I'm so glad that I got to. So glad I was persistent. I absolutely love what you do. Your messaging that you give out is just beyond amazing. And I think realistically, if us from hunters can learn anything from you, it's to talk about our messaging in a positive light. And I think that in general is what's going to help save hunting and what we do. It's going to preserve what we can do, and so we can pass it on to the generations that we've got to come, and hopefully help us enough to fight back against the non scientific, the feelings and the approach that's being had on hunting right now. So yeah, thank you for what you do, man. It really is incredible.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate the time, and yeah, just if you ever want to have me on again, just let me know.
100%. It will happen.
Yeah.